Hello, welcome everybody.
Oh, hi there. Let's pretend I look like this because of quarantine.
So, if you guys don't are not familiar with the face of Matt Vancil, that is the face of Matt Vancil. He's joining us tonight to answer questions, do some commentary on the third Gamers movie, The Gamers Hands of Fate. So, we're going to be kind of stuck in, enjoying our corn streaming. Um, so,
Common stream. That's good.
yeah. I was not the one that came up with that.
No, that
I
was
do not
Bryce.
take
It's,
That was
credit.
it's
Bryce.
it's fitting. It's a good portmanteau for the times. There.
Yeah. So, do you have a anything you'd like to say before we kind of hit play, or just want to get into it?
Well, I was realizing as I was preparing for this that of the projects that we've done, I don't know that there was a. This is the largest one we had done up to that point, and it's the one I remember the least because of what was going on at the time. There was this. We had this crazy uh, this overly ambitious year in 2012 where we did both Journey Quest Season 2 and Gamers 3. And by did, I mean we filmed both of them. We filmed JQ2 in the spring, and then we filmed Journey Quest 3, Gamers 3 in the fall. What happened just on the personal life was my son was born in March of 2012, but he showed up a month early. And so I wasn't on Journey Quest 2. I was going to be co-directing with Ben Dobbins, and Wesley was born 3 days before the shoot as a preemie. And he showed up, he was under 5 pounds. He was very tiny. And so that took me off of that. And then uh, when it came time to go into pre-production for Gamers 3 and to be writing that, I was, sleep-deprived new father. In addition to, that you had the premature baby and all the needs there. So I don't remember much of pre-production or the writing process. I remember being on set for JQ2 in mismatching sweat clothes and writing on scenes, but it's like remembering portions of a dream that you don't quite call for it. But I remember when I got onto set. But still, for the amount of lore and work and technical challenges that the film required us to overcome, still don't remember much about it. Because that whole year is much of a I get a few details, but a lot of it was lost. The transition from not being a parent to being a parent is dramatic, and maybe it wasn't the best idea to time our most ambitious year so far uh, with that coming up.
Well, hopefully, some questions may jog your memory, or even just watching it.
That might. It's been a while. It's been quite a while since I've seen this movie. Part of that also is like on the original Gamers and on Darkness Rising. I was heavily involved in post production. Like Darkness was being edited in Los Angeles when I was in Los Angeles for film school, and so I met with the editor Dan Capuzzi, multiple times a month, to the point where I could recite the movie to myself from like frame one till the end credits. And I didn't have that level of familiarity here because family circumstances took me away from a lot of post production. So I'm looking forward to seeing this. I haven't seen it for a while. I hope it jogs enough of my memory to make the next couple hours worthwhile.
Yeah. Well,
All right.
we've also got chat, so there'll
Oh
be
dear.
some interjections in there. But yeah, I think we're ready to get going here.
All right.
Counterplay, where separate threads converge in the tapestry of worlds. A world of settlers, both by choice and accident. A world of conflict between civilizations, young and ancient, noble and cruel, living and otherwise. A world unresolved, with many vying to shape its fate. Only one thing is certain about Counterplay. Its future will not be determined here, or here, for that, matter.
That matter.
Its future will not be determined here, or here, for that, matter.
All right. 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 All right.
So we have an unfortunate tendency to nearly kill Matt Shimkus due to exposure on any shoot that we're on. I think the first two films he was on, he nearly got hypothermia. That was Demon Hunters 2 when he was playing the character of London in the snows, and he only had a thin, like, cotton trench coat to keep the warmth in. And then when he played Rogar, that, fake fur was fake fur, something I got, I think, out of a discount bin at Joann's, with some sweatpants that were turned inside out to give him a different texture so they didn't read as sweatpants. So he was cold for a lot of that. This, conversely, he is sweltering. He's about probably, I think, in 3 different layers there. The eyes are the only part of his body the only part of his skin that is open to the air. And we're filming this in a place called, I think it's just called the production shop, or I may be misremembering that, but it's in Burien. And it's a cool little space, a garage actually. It's got a couple of really neat old restored classic cars and a lot of decorations from that era. So if you like car restoration shows, it's a neat place to film. But they got a big wide open space, about 2 stories high. And it's where we shot a lot of stuff, a lot of small sets for both Journey Quest 2 and Gamers 3. This was one of the sets that we built there, where we used a lot of pieces. You can see the walls in the background are foam core that's been blowtorched and painted into those patterns. And anywhere you see a pillar, the smaller line of bricks in front is covering up a seam between panels there. So there, a little bit of dispelled movie magic. And of course there is the not so subtle Easter egg symbol of the Cult of Shadowjam, one of the 9 factions from the card game.
The princess was never my objective, no. I have discovered a secret about our world, a truth that defies all of it. I'm surprised you even get reception down here.
If you answer that, I will punch you forever.
Steve Wolbrecht, of course, that's the Ninja Dragon Rider's theme, as is Gary's ringtone.
No, now's a great time.
Boss, some guy has a question about renting the room.
That's on the rate sheet.
Right, he'd like to know how much it costs.
Oh, yeah, that would be on the rate sheet.
And if we're gonna take a break, I need to feed the meter.
I actually have to get going.
You gotta be kidding me.
Sorry, we have an early load-in in the morning and we still haven't cleared the bay.
You're killing me, guys. You're killing me.
Writing challenge, the structural challenge of this movie that we had to put together was that we gave ourselves, and maybe we thought it a bit.
Pretty big customer.
Well, we looked at it as we need to make a sequel to Darkness Rising that includes the Darkness Rising characters. They each need to have their own little plot, which it's not in the main story. It's on the deleted scenes that are in the on the DVD.
This isn't going the way.
And then it came down to the question of, do we want to do the same thing that we've done over again, the RPG fantasy, or do we want to try to move into something new? And at the time I was
really gonna miss
really into a collectible card game called Legend of the Five Rings, published by AEG, or otherwise known as Albrecht Entertainment Group. And I'd played it for years with some of the other folks involved in random coming from behind the door there. And had a night for a gamer that would be set in a trading card game world. We'd actually had gotten a tentative green light for this concept 4 years earlier in 2008, when we thought we would be doing the next Gamers movie with the company that was distributing the original distributor for Darkness Rising, until they stole a bunch of money they owed us and then went out of business. So, in time to do the next Gamers feature, we thought, well, do we want to retread the ground that we've already done, which we're pretty confident we can do, or do we want to branch into something new? And we decided to go with the new bit. And I know that a lot of folks have questioned that, or not, weren't just happy that we just didn't stick to the RPG stuff. Seen a lot, I love RPGs, hate TCGs or CCGs, whatever. And I understand that, but I still think it was the right choice. What I think, ultimately, looking back at the film, that we didn't do right, a couple things, and part of it's coming up here, is introducing swearing back into it, which
all these dorks in my store.
out of
We're double
as
booked.
it's rising to make it more family friendly. And then we thought, why not just bring it back? Let's see. We expect our audience is a bit more mature.
I can promise a table at
In the meaning,
JFK.
by which I mean they're older than children.
Waffles
If I had to, and I would pull the cursing out. And I would also, I don't know that I'd do this piece or that we would do this piece as a movie because it is, I think it's the longest film that we've done, even with the deleted scenes moved. And I think it would probably be better as a mini series because we could, again, the issue is we've got
think it was you.
5 real world gamers whose stories we want to see continue from Darkness Rising. We've got a whole bunch of other new characters in the fantasy world of the card game who don't have real world corollaries, and so we can't get Luster's story in the real world with Gary or Daphne's story in the real world with Joanna here, which limits the nature of the comedy and the storytelling that you can do because we don't have the dramatic irony by observation of another character in another reality looking in and controlling that behavior as much. So there was so much that we had to do narratively. We introduced so many storylines that I feel a number of them got rushed, which is unfortunate. But overall, I'm still pretty happy with what we accomplished for our budget and the time involved and the look of the film as well. Okay, only 2 hours to go.
So, Candy in the chat wants to know what plan did you play?
I warned you.
Oh, crap.
I sell card games and they'll come. Those mouth-breathing card floppers. In ones and twos at first, and then more would follow. And now they've nested and taken over my precious table space.
Is this what you wanted, Leo?
So, for Merc
Gaggle
in the chat, the
of
question was what
shambling
plan did Matt
fail
play
elementals
in the,
cloying the
Legend of
air?
the Five Rings, the
Do
real
not
world
get your
corollary
nerd
to
rage on
card
this.
game that's in the movie.
You love
Matt's
breaking
crab
games.
plan.
Why don't you just stick
Crab
around, see what happens?
Oh,
Yeah.
Mai Tai? Might I please for chance to spend hundreds of dollars on a non-interactive game with no underlying narrative? Squee! Hold me back! This is sarcasm, by the way. This game has absolutely zero.
The squeak gets me every time.
Ew, beard face. You the TO?
T.O.,
Hey,
tournament organizer.
other beard face. Boom. Card me.
Oh, our first Holden player tonight. Mind if I ask your bill?
West Military Switch.
Awesome.
My own special blend.
Yeah, I miss Switch. I used to run something very similar with the Tuatha before the Legacy broke us. This is my favorite deck ever.
Sorry, man.
Yeah. Well, I quit the game.
Part of the fun and part of the challenge of making this fictitious card game feel authentic was building in history to it.
You got
And
it.
the thing that about Legend of the Five Rings that was so compelling to me in a number of AEG's other games was that they had living narrative storylines.
You don't need any more carbs.
Unlike Magic or
I left them at home.
Pokemon or some other popular trading card games, to play L5R you had to choose a clan.
All I heard was virgin,
based out of stronghold.
crusty
And
sock.
there were many different
right,
options,
Chad, I
even
warned
within
ya.
the same clan. You
You're
could play
outta
different
here.
strongholds that had different
Hans, door.
play style and mechanics that they lent you to. But it's not like in Magic you would have to declare, like, I am a green player, I will only play green. But you can use whatever cards that you want.
Yes.
In L5R you could do
Really
that as
sorry
well,
about
but
that.
you are
Comes with
considered
the
a player
territory.
of the clan whose
How
strongholds
dare
you
I
play.
go with ovaries?
So what
You
happened
only
was
want
people
his
would become
boobs.
fiercely devoted to their clans, almost
I
like
can use
a
that.
sports team
Nice.
support, and
Sup, Craig?
stuff with a lot
Do
of
I kick your
rivalry
ass
with other
today?
clans and trash talking on the
Cassian
forums and
hates
such.
CCG.
And the reason why that
No
part of this was that
competition.
the storyline in
Maybe I'll
the
meet
game was
Yay!
not predetermined.
No,
They
wait,
would lead up to major crises, and then tournament results from major conventions would determine which clan overthrew the evil demonic
Would you look at
emperor,
that? We're
which
actually just past the sign-in phase.
has its champion become the new emerald champion of
But for
the
you,
and so there was actual stakes
I'll give you
in
30 if I
the
beat her in the first round.
I'll take
in these
that
tournaments.
30.
You went and you to play as best as you could and try to finish top of your clan and win some sort of honors or accolades. And the game designers paid attention to that as well, to how players play. And so the player base had this massive investment in the outcome of the story. And favorite characters would age, would die, and marry, and have children, and they would have more experienced versions of themselves. So that by the time the game not really ended, but was sold to Fantasy Flight Games, it had about 20 years of player-driven history. And that represented, I think, something like 60 to 80 years of actual history in the world of the game. So we were trying to hit something like that here with Byron's discussion of used to be.
1 generation ago, Sim Buxtehude and Tuatha Dunduril led an alliance against the god king Shad Hujem and his undead allies.
His shirt wears the different colors.
They toppled the Dark One from his godhead's seat and sealed his throne under a mountain of stone.
Well, he sort of high fairy right? Of and cool.
I know. Yes, the only girl here.
That is how I want to be remembered.
I'm Cass, and you have already turned your fortunes completely around.
I have a tape.
Who disagreed over whether or not they should get involved with the other factions of Counter May, and in a previous
issues forth the dread army with a single goal in mind: to return Ulix.
Conflict between the Tuatha, within the Tuatha, between the Seelie and the Unseelie, came to a head, and they fought, and the Unseelie won. Which is why the background color of the Tuatha's symbol is now black. And Byron is wearing the shirt of when the Tuatha were not, when the Seelie were still dominant. And so when he's mentioning, okay, take care of Dunduril for us, Dunduril was one of the few Tuatha princes in the storyline who was still alive or unaccounted for, who hadn't been hunted down and destroyed by the Unseelie who are now holding onto his clan. This bit, the Cry Havocs, is taken directly from Legend of the Five Rings, where before every tournament they have the bonsai shot, where the tournament organizer would yell, "Uts!" and everyone else yells, "Bonsai!" And they do that 3 times before they begin to play. So, a bit of verisimilitude here.
Welcome to the Romance of 9.
And I did play in a few tournaments, and I lost most of them. I did not fare very well. I am not a good trading card game player. I will say that. Some of the guys in our group, Nathan Rice, Matt Shimkus, Jesse Stratton, very good. I placed second in a local tournament once, and that was the high water mark ever that I did. But I still love the structure of it and how the storyline was determined and the interactions of the tournament life itself, which we tried to recreate here. As a backdrop for Cass's completely inappropriate pursuit of Natalie during an actual tournament play.
So, Cannon wants to know if there is a place where all of this really cool lore of the
You speak in complete sentences, and I'm reasonably certain that you've bathed in the last 24.
Well, sort of. Like, I put together a vision document for Gamers 3 that sometimes, and I did this for Journey Quest 4 as well. It's basically, here's what you're thinking, writing phase, the earliest phase of pre-production. It's like, here's, it's not a viewer-facing document. It's for like locations and characters and affiliations, different clans and whatnot. Here are the costume styles I'm thinking. Here's some lore that's not going to make it into the movie, but that helps illustrate the look of things. Or here's the climate this faction is from. Here are the tensions and fights and conflicts they've had. Here are their former allies. Here are their and so on and so forth. And so I put one of those together. Also, and this was super cool. When we were filming this at Gen Con, the first parts of this, all practice side were actually a part They did. That's a mock-up, one of the cards there for it. I did put together information on that for AEG for when they were putting together the card game, because obviously they're the actual game company that put together the mechanics. That's not something I want input in, because again, I'm not a good card player myself. I'm a narrative. So created some of this for
You've won a
that,
berth in the
and
national
then
championship
Woody
and
Arnold,
the
who is
storyline
an
prize.
independent publisher, has put
What's it
out
gonna be?
a counter.
War or diplomacy?
Wrath of the
War,
God
of
King, I think
course.
it is, which is the first story.
If you don't like the way the game is going, all you gotta do is beat the legacy of Gen Con.
Thank you.
Come on! Hate me more! Your
Matt,
rage
we are
gives me
having some
strength!
issues with this Skype call.
Great
You
game,
are going through
Madeleine.
periods where
You
you're
give the
cutting
legacy
out.
another win.
So I don't know if there's a microphone issue on your end.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, now
Hey,
yes.
you kicked some
But I may
serious
have to
ass in
repeat
there.
some
I
things,
lost.
Like later on if it continues.
Now I gotta play my way out of the Swiss.
Okay, would you like me to
Fuck
repeat
you.
anything? Hi,
Not
Wesley.
right now.
Want to come in to say hi to everyone?
Don't play. They're this cabal of elite dickbags who like fucking
That's Wesley.
player base and making
kid.
unpopular story decisions.
Let's see, where
They
was?
created the starvation deck that
Oh yes.
on there.
Woody Arnold and
And they
comic. I think
just
it's Wrath of the God King.
behind an undead army
It's
that doesn't have to
the
eat
story.
while they
They're
wipe
both in
out
here
all
now.
food production
Honey.
on the board. So you can't even bring your heroes into play without them starving to death. And they
where was
just
I?
whittle you away.
The
while you
storyline
sit
in this
there
comic was the
watching your
arrival
deck
of the
burn.
displaced, the
And they're
American
gonna
World War
ride
II
that
faction who showed
all the
up
way to the
in
championship
a few
and flush
storylines
questing down the
prior
toilet.
to the storyline that's taking place in the movie here.
Them's
And
the
then
stakes.
a lot of this lore is
Shawsey
hinted
wins.
at or is
Question's
stated
gone as a victory
obliquely
condition.
in the Farther All World Guide, which
I
I
never thought I'd leave
wrote
this game.
all of last year and should be coming out
I can't
soon
take this shit
as a
anymore.
source book for the world of the
Without
gamers
any
and journeyers.
ability to affect anything.
That was good. I'm gonna be rude and eat a sandwich now.
Wow,
Or at least
I
take bites off.
really
If you have any questions,
ranted
it'd be a good time
all
to.
over you.
It's okay, I didn't understand most of it anyway. So, waffles?
Tell you what, Thunderjaw.
So Matt,
Win Gen Con for Holden.
Chad wants to know what is
Put
your
my
favorite
queen on the
kind
throne.
of sandwich?
And sure, I'll go out with you.
Probably scrambled egg.
Ooh, yeah.
With
Yeah,
sriracha
good
and
scrambled
cheese.
egg sandwich.
I have to say, this last scene, I love that scene. I love Trin's performance in it. And the emotions for her were on the surface that day because it was actually the last day we
I'm
filmed.
telling you, it would.
Hadley.
There is zero
And
evidence
really
to support
identified
your
hard with
claim.
the character.
The evidence is rather
On
clear.
both levels.
Let's ask
And
Kat.
we had been through so much already in this shoot. We've been to Indianapolis, we filmed
Ready for this?
live in front of 600 people for that tournament scene, which I'll discuss more in detail later. And then it was back, and we filmed at ZOE Con, put that together, that big LARP scene. And so, you know, the shoot was it started really big and was getting smaller and smaller. And on our final day with her, it was one of the first scenes we did. And her speech at the end was one of the last things we did there. So, and after that, it was time for Natalie. That was hard. I mean,
Deal with him sooner or
get
later.
you spend that much time with him, and
I don't think I'm ready
it's
yet. Well,
can be hard
good luck
to
finding
say
a
goodbye.
place to stay. The rooms were nearly all gone when we booked ours 6 months ago.
Not going to be
You know
talking
what?
to you
It's
as
going
much.
to be kind of nice to get away, just two of us. You know, we have some important matters to engage in, to discuss. Just some personal.
You can stay with us.
That's what I was waiting to hear.
Thanks. Saves me having to ask.
Wait, Joe, you don't.
Come on, Kevin. It'll be fun. Besides, they're our friends. You wouldn't want to leave them out in the cold, would you? Would you? Group road trip. Fun. Yay!
Now all I have to do is learn how to play the Nine Kingdoms.
Blurlight asks,
Yeah, tomato,
where
tomato.
did the Kraken dick come from? Whose fault is that?
All right.
That's my fault.
Which one of you guys
So-
wants to lose to a guy who's touched boob?
Oh, you don't want to Oh, there's little baby Wesley there. There's the baby who was born with the Jane hat. With my wife, with Camille. I love what they've done in the background here. I'll answer that question in a sec. Just to talking a bit about how to make
You are summoned to the Queen.
this work. We filmed at Victory Studios in Seattle,
It is as I feared.
which is a green
War
screen
has come to
stage
Holden. The cult of
for
Shadhu Jem marches
both
against
a
us.
solid week to create
Meet them in battle, Myriad.
the assets that we needed to
Save
fit
our
in
kingdom.
the background plates that were done by CCG artists to create the look of the card art in the movie. And I'm pleased with how it turned out. Answer to your question, which was, I'm sorry, what was the question?
The question was, where did the Kraken dick come from?
Oh God!
Rematch.
You can see I'll put up some mental walls to forget some of these things. How is it? After Darkness Rising
You are
wrapped,
summoned to the Queen.
It is
I
as
found
I
out I
feared.
accepted into
War
film
has
school,
come
and
to
so
Holden.
we moved down to
The
Los
Ord
Angeles in
of the floating
2005.
devil
I
march
graduated in
against us.
2007.
Meet them in
2
battle,
months
Myriad.
before the Writers Guild
Save
strike
our
of
kingdom.
2007 and 8. So no one was hiring, we couldn't get really anything made. Struggled a couple more years down there before making Journey Quest 1 in 2010, and then we moved back up here. And as we moved back up here, I thought out in LA, where they work, and I took a job working in the Paizo warehouse up in Redmond, because my wife also works in Redmond, and so we could commute together. And think about the warehouse. It's a very different culture than working in the actual office there. You get there really early in the morning.
Buxtehude, you are summoned to the Queen.
It is as I feared. War has come to Holden. Feels so familiar.
A sense of humor
Something
to keep yourself
unlike anything
motivated,
I've ever
working
seen.
very long
Marches against
in a
us.
cold box.
Meet them in battle,
Hump
Myriad.
lobster.
Beans, be gone from this land.
Matt, your audio is gone completely for the last.
Are we even playing the same game?
I'm playing Chibi Dance number 1. Hooray.
That's okay, you didn't hear me bemoaning the existence of Chibi-chan. Good table flip.
Oh, grow up!
Man, you are like an anti-montage.
Hey, kids. Come on, let's leave the sad man alone.
You just keep
baby.
getting worse.
Please, from the bottom of my heart, and I do mean this sincerely, keep trying. Your flailing at mediocrity is marvelous entertainment.
Might I have a look at your deck?
It's not like you're gonna be able to help. Those kids are obviously cheating.
Now he's
So the thing
blaming
about
kids?
Chibi-chan,
This is
I
like
wasn't originally
Christmas
going to play
and my
Chibi-chan,
birthday.
just like I was not originally going to play Mitch or
Let's do a test run.
Horgarble
See if we
or
can't find the
Hug.
problem.
It was, we need someone to play this part.
Buxtehude.
Am I summoned
It'll take
to the
15
Queen?
on an act all the days you get in there. So fine, I'll do Chibi-chan. I'll never live this down, but
Yes.
We must
I'll
face
take
Is
this
it
one
war?
for the team.
Has war come to Holden? War? Heavens, no. I merely wished to assess our defenses.
Have you been sleeping? You look troubled.
I've been having the strangest dreams. At least that's what I think they are. Dreams?
Majesty, our defenses are woefully inadequate. Not a kingdom in the world can stand against the Dread Army. And with famine rampant,
We have neither the troops nor the wealth to prevail.
If we are too weak to stand on our own, then what we clearly need are allies.
So
A
the
political
character
marriage
of
would strengthen our position.
I'm
Thunder
more used to us here.
was
What do you
originally in the
suggest?
lore of the game
How shall we
from
defend
the
ourselves?
Tuatha faction. And after the
Let me
Sealy
quest,
lost to that
Majesty,
civil
the way my
war,
father did, the way that made
in the
Holden
lore
great.
of the
Days of
game,
epic
they had a
questing
series
are
of
over,
tournaments to
Myriad.
determine what happened to important
They
Sealy
died before
characters. A faction who won a certain
Assess our
tournament
defenses.
would
I
have
would know how
one of
inadequate
those
they
Sealy
are
characters
before I
join
take
their
marriage off the
faction,
table.
which later when Natalie mentions that she
Here's
actually
the
won the
problem.
tournament that brought
Your gold
Dundreal
to
to
food
Holden,
ratio is off.
that's part of that.
You've got
The ones who failed are the
too
ones who
few
were won by
quests
the
and a metric
the
buttload of
legacy
heroes. If you're questing,
killed those characters.
you need to focus
So
around
there was a
these
number.
two.
There was a big
Myriad
purge of
and Dundreal.
We have only these few men.
two other characters from that era.
Strangely similar to you?
We can't supply a larger army, and our weapons selection is embarrassingly out of date.
We cannot defend ourselves with this. My father could have.
I wonder. Crafty as he was, I doubt even old Sim could have made a go of it with these paltry resources. Sly old fox. I miss him.
There has to be something we haven't considered. Something we haven't thought of.
There is. Retreat. Leave the castle. Lead your people back into the marches. This, Holden, it has been a wonderful experiment and a welcoming refuge. But Sim made many enemies when he carved it from the wilderness. Enemies with long memories. I've been through the fall of
The idea here in the lore was that Holden was not one of the original factions, one of the original 9 empires when the game was released 15 years prior to this in the movie, and that players who
sort them by color,
like characters Sim Buxtehude and these characters from the Holden Marches, sort of were able to win their own faction by success in tournament play. And it actually has a corollary in history of the 5 Rings, with a faction from the early history of that game called Tuturi's Army, where Akoto Tuturi was a disgraced former general of the Lion Clan who led a group of Ronin together to fight against the demonic
Wouldn't have even
emperor.
been an
And
option if I had been
had
born your
enough
son.
success and enough player support that it became its own faction. And Tuturi later became emperor. It was cool.
This is about the first 10 years of R9E. I have playsets of all the rares, all the promos. Some of these even go back to the initial print run.
Now, one of the things we wanted to do long term with the character of Leo is to
practically impossible to
make it clear that he actually is a good tactical gamer, just that RPGs were not the first thing that he came into. And part of that is because, Scott is such a good actor, and there were points where he
We got these lost.
felt he was being, he was just the butt of a lot of jokes in Darkness, and had questions about, like, is this Leo? I mean, Leo he owns his own game store, how can he be so bad at this? And part of that is
we need to defend our kingdom,
dice
don't you
karma
see?
for the character who can't roll for crap. But part of it also is, you're a gamer who came of age in other games. The original idea was wargaming, miniature, and the like, Warhammer or stuff.
And I mean, you've got to convince me.
Which called for a different
it's a
skill
worthwhile
set.
use of my time.
But
So I'll put it
given
to you
that
straight.
we're doing a movie about trading card games and one that had a long history, this is a great time to give Leo some different other dimensions. And it's also more of a leap from TCG rules to RPG rules than it would be, tactically from combat of miniatures to RPG. So we thought, that could be it. That could be where he excels. He's one of the great players of this early game who has since retired and is able to then step into the Swordmaster role here with young Cass.
All I needed to hear.
Comes the protagonist of this movie.
With this deck, you'll be questing, so you'll want a blend of strong mid-game quests,
Connor.
game-ending knockout quests, and quick cheeser quests to get you started. Here is a classic, a most peculiar lamp.
Oh, just so you know, when I remember this, I'm totally gonna imagine the Matrix training sequence.
What?
Cards. Lots of cards.
So here's this is something that happens when you kind of write yourself into a corner. I hadn't mentioned this yet. I was planning to wait until we got to the actual con. But this movie had 3 separate points for the movie we were filming. We had this unique opportunity to film on the main stage of Gen Con in the hall that holds, like 1,000 people for Gen Con 2012. But we only had, I think it was 2 hours for the whole thing. And we were also doing the very first Gamers Live then, which is how we got to win.
I've been wondering that for 30 years.
So,
thanks for showing us the way. Now stay
it's
down.
Down,
I said.
Romance of the Night Empire. So, we do Gamers Live, and then we have 1 hour to rattle off 8 pages of script, which is impossible. Like 8 pages maybe in a day is something that a independent film that's working at full tilt could churn out. We typically do 5 to 6. Hollywood production or super film, 2 to 3.
Baseball, democracy, apple pie.
You are an angel's not immortal. You can't go throwing yourself into risk like that.
Why ever not?
What was I saying? Yes. So we're on the main stage at Gen Con. We're not filming the entire scenes there, the entirety of the scene there. We're filming all of the stuff that required the crowd. So when we see the crowd in the background, when we see the crowd's reactions, we're filming that there. And then we have to make that match on a set that we're reconstructing months later, in November, where we're doing the close-ups on the stage. Then, on top of that, there was stuff that we did in February when we did the Matrix flashback with Leo and Cass, which was because when you structure the film this way, you are locked into certain footage.
I'm 9-0 today. Who am I playing?
It happens in certain stages. Like we were filming in November with locked footage from August that we had to match.
The die have been cast and the cards drawn, and
exactly
this
the
year's
circumstances. I was
sacrificial lamb will be played by newcomer
at that time.
Sean Cassidy.
But we had to write the late game in order to do this training sequence in a way that fit this blues narrative. So we did it as Tricks Flash app.
Rise, my friends.
The guy pushing the chair is Leon Phillips, who's a great L5R player and one of the kings of our local flavor of C. We've seen the man with the enormous chops.
What you see is a row of championship banners. For this is my home store. It is here I have qualified for every global storyline tournament since the dawn of the game. And yet the topic of conversation tonight is not my inexorable 10th consecutive qualifying tournament victory, but is instead of some newcomer slinging a slate of vintage quests. Why is this?
Regimes change.
Yes, Design built that chair.
That chair looks comfy. Does that come with the win?
This location
one-half or one-third
is 20 games,
will I be
which was owned at one point by Andy Dombrowski, which is how we met him.
Of my deck.
Their game room in the back is the room where we filmed the gaming room at the beginning of the movie, when Lodge and Joanna and Cass and all were gaming and their session was interrupted. We no longer had the ability to recreate the old game room from Darkness Rising. So here's the funny thing about movie magic. You don't film all the same locations within the same building. Hi, Maddie.
Set yourself up for victory. There's a reason you're carrying 3 of these.
Biggest turnip?
Yes, hooray!
Biggest turnip.
Yucky water, oh my.
Every quest gets to be epic.
Maybe I'm missing something.
Yes, we might have to clean
What
yucky water.
exactly is the big heroic deed here?
So, yeah, no
Growing a
idea why
giant
I'm so
freak
distracted
vegetable?
these days.
More or less.
Right, so the original Darkness Rising, we filmed in a location called the Game Matrix, an actual game store in Tacoma. Hans, the assistant, was played by the late Chris Hewitt.
Tactical
Rest in
or
peace.
economic realities
And when we did
around,
Darkness Rising, the game room that was at the back of that aisle was
by growing
in the then dead gentleman office called the wood paneling, which is where they did the gaming there. Well, we no longer had that office space when it came time to film Hands of Fate. I love that transition with the slap. So to recreate it, we did it in. No, you can't watch the video in here. You can be with me if you turn that off.
Take another turn.
Camille, I've got 2 children in here. It's Minnie and Blanky too. That's honey. Will Disney shut down this live stream now? I don't know.
It doesn't.
I don't know if we have enough people watching for that.
Now take another.
Come on. Threw them outside. Let's see. Right, so we had to recreate the game room, so we did it in this other game store, and just dressed it as much as we could to sort of make it work, and just pray that the audience forgives the fact that it's a completely different space 7 years after we filmed the first one. Oh, I forgot.
It's like we talked about. A desperate offer can save your ass. You get 3 renown to give one of your quest rewards to one of your opponent's guys.
And that helps me how?
It might buy you a turn. Might.
It's already set up for how Cass wins the tournament against Weaver.
I think that turnip is my favorite ZOE prop.
A word of advice, Mr. Cassidy.
It's ridiculous.
No matter how gimmicky your deck, the jank that gets you through the Swiss won't hold up in the elimination rounds.
Tell
the
puppet
turnip
master.
is actually still in the live studio.
Questing
Yeah,
is
It
dead.
doesn't have the leaves anymore, but it is in the live studio.
Our champion for the 10th consecutive year.
Yeah, it did lose its greenery.
Mish.
It's been, how long has it been? 8 years.
Carrie, it is conversations like this that keep you
D20
single.
games.
But the logic bears out, right? Now, tell me I'm wrong. Here's the thing. I'm not.
Look, if I have to pick a side,
You do?
fine.
So, how much of Gary's wardrobe is just Christian's wardrobe?
Science.
That's a very good
I don't know
question.
what logic's problem is.
Hey,
We
can I talk to you?
Please.
part of the lore, and I forget how much of this actually came across, is that in Darkness, Gary's a student, and in Hands of Fate, he's got his own company and he's got a whole bunch of money.
Beyond that,
and it has not
you've been, I don't know,
touched
ever
his
since
sense
Night.
of
It's
style.
been,
Like, doesn't know how to
I've
spend
just
it,
had a lot
and
of my
so he
mind.
dresses
You know, I've
like
been
a
preoccupied with
like an idiot, basically.
Am I involved?
You know, no matter what happens at Gen Con or how things end,
Hey, Wes, can you go close the door, please?
you know I love you, right?
Yeah? Why? Planning to backstab me in True Dungeon?
Hey, Gary?
True Dungeon.
Hey! You did great.
He beat me in 9 cards.
The Meech has won 4 Gen Cons. He is arguably the best player in the game today.
Right. So, how am I supposed to beat him at Gen Con?
With any luck, the Legacy will knock him out of the tournament.
Okay. How am I supposed to beat the Legacy?
With any luck, the Meech will knock him out of the tournament.
You're not helping.
Looks like I froze.
Every year in the sweltering late August heat, a strange creature will follow its instinctual migration pattern here to urban Indiana.
You're
The game.
moving and I can hear
During this
you
great
on my
annual
end.
migration, gamers of all species, from the Midwestern neckbeard to the quivering man jelly, will descend upon
The image
Indianapolis
is
by the
frozen
tens
on
of
my
thousands.
computer.
A group of gamers, called a table, is virtually unheard of in these numbers, but congregate they do every year for Gen Con. They have come such a distance for the same reasons as any migratory mammal,
Try that
to
again?
build up resources for the long winter months and to mate. The pageantry of the 4-day con is not to be missed. Members of this giant table will adorn themselves with colorful plumage and perform bizarre mating displays to stand out from their rivals. Competition among males for the demographically fewer females is fierce but seldom lethal. Of the gamers who do successfully mate, many will return a year later with their offspring, the geeklet, assuring the cycle of gamer life will
Okay, that's
continue
better.
for at least another generation.
But for every successful pairing, there are a multitude of failures. Male gamers who fail to successfully find a mate must return to their feeding grounds alone, where they will content themselves with their comic books, video games, and their latent misogyny.
This is one of the sequences that, because I was unable to be as much a part of post-production as I wanted to, it didn't match the vision as I'd written it. the gamer nature documentary, had I done it, would have been more like the David Attenborough Planet Earth or Blue Planet, which is why, actually, and I directed Nathan to do it that way.
High enough in the Swiss that you advance
At
to the
Gen,
elimination
we're actually
round.
at Gen Con
That's
here.
where
This
the
is the
real
4 days
fight
that we were
begins.
filming. Filmed at the
But
top
first,
of
you got
that
to get your deck logged, and
escalator.
Are you even
And so
listening?
when Nathan is finishing his speech, he slows down and becomes more sonorous, because that was the idea for how to do it when it was done. But didn't wind up that way, and hey, that's fine. Here we are back at
For me, I hope
production
you guys gonna put your king on the
shop
throne.
in
Right. Only
Burien.
queen.
So we recreated
Oh dear
the
God, you thought I was serious.
sign-in
I expect that
stage
Dayton
area
will
with
win.
the sort of with the bunting that we get from
Why is a bowling team here?
that we borrowed from
So full
actually
disclosure,
actual convention
my
there to
tweezers
match
not
what the
actually
look
legal in the
was
States.
at
Had to send
Gen
them
Con.
up
So
for
here we are
I'm
matching stuff
detecting a hint of
3 months
negativity.
with a 3-month difference
It's
in filming
you
time and several
from-
states away.
Right, displaced military switch deck. Yeah. Right.
You're telling me he plays?
Are you joking? Oh my gosh, he's awesome. Wow. You lasted what, like 9 cards against the Meech? 9 cards? Yeah. I got a lot to say, don't you? Have you recruited him yet?
Ad-lib
Why
from-
no, she has not. Tell me more. Oh man, check it. So a bunch of Astoria players have formed an alliance. What? To take down the legacy and keep questing in the game.
So this is
We're gonna
actually a
get
thing
the
that
best
would happen
anti-starvation team into the
in
finals.
these big
Whether it's
L5R
ours
tournaments,
or
is
somebody
that
else's.
players allied to one
Isn't that
faction
great?
or another who wanted
check it.
to
You
bring
even got
about
buttons.
certain story objectives would form alliances there. They'd all agree to
it's an alliance to
choose
lose?
their samurai
Clearly
for
nothing
the Emerald Championship, or we're here to defeat this clan, we're here to defeat the Shadowlands. Let's
Oh,
work
shit, like
together, and they would
NASCAR?
give each other bounties, or they would post bounties. You know, here's a bunch of cards, or here's a rare card from the beginning of the set. If you do X in the tournament, and they'll give it to whoever succeeds at
I'm trying to
that.
wrangle
So again,
the
something
big
that we're
ginger
drawing
snake
from
over
actual
Natalie? Yeah,
CCG
I can't
gamer
do that unless
life.
I get her monarch ass down on a godhead seat. So I have to win. Just give me the damn button.
I wanted to thank everyone for making 9 Empires the game it is today. You know, 15 years ago when we started this, people told us we were crazy for making a card game where the players could influence the story.
And worked extensively on the assets for the next setup. We're actually here in the cards hall at Gen Con in 12. Now, Jen Page, of course, and
The fate of the world lies in your hands, brothers and sisters. In 3 days' time, we will
we
crown
wanted to
our
get
new
Jen in the
monarch.
movie, of course, because she's fantastic and she's a fan base favorite. But the issue, of course, is that the character that she plays in has no real world corollary. You know, Gary is playing a female character. He keeps forgetting that character's gender. It's, a joke we flip back and forth between them. So we wanted to get Jen in, so we created this character, Penelope Shock,
There's
head
so
writer
much going on and so much to
L5R.
see.
Can we take a break?
Sorry, R9.
There's no time. There's so much stuff to
Now
see.
here we are at the very first
There's a
ZOE
list with
which
pronouns.
we
7 best things
created
in life.
partly
We have
to
4 days. We'll catch it all. And
bring enough people
there's
in
something I
to
need to
create
ask.
the
If I don't
illusion
get
of
it
an
out of the
actual
way, I'm gonna
con.
worry about it for a
Because trying to film at a convention, as we discovered in August of 2012, is insane and nuts. Because you can't control the background. You can't control people moving through your space. You can't control the sound. And bad sound is something that can kill a film better than Elvis. So part of ZOECon was
wholesale
to
rate with a
create
5% chance of return
the
yield to
look
total book
of
value of
Gen Con
approximately
in one of these, side rooms,
So here
in order to have an environment that we could actually control while we were filming. This scene with the kissing booth, this is something that we've seen at conventions before, and it also gave us a chance to show Gary's math brain,
Yeah,
and sort of
well,
suggest why maybe he got
I need a
to
powder.
a very quick IPO and now has China as an enemy.
A powder? Oh, yes. And then maybe I'll just swoon on my fainting couch. Because I'm a girl. Girl.
Girl.
So the stormtroopers. Why are there stormtroopers? So this is kind of amazing. Scott Brown put me in touch with Alvin Johnson, who is the head of the 501st Brigade Stormtroopers, Stormtrooper reenactors, who are actually close with Lucasfilm. Now, at the time, well, I should say there, at the time, this is before Disney bought Lucasfilm.
At a con?
So they had the rights to appear as these characters at certain cons, and Alvin went to Lucasfilm and said, "Hey, can we appear as ourselves in this unrelated movie?" Which is how a ZOE film has licensed Star Wars characters in it.
Think you have a balls into?
Got the okay from then Lucasfilm for them to show up in our movie and play the security force for the con. Still amazing. Oh, god damn it.
Thus begins the descent to madness.
Right.
Hey, look.
So the thing about this suit
I don't have a
is
problem with you, man. We can
it's
both enjoy the con.
it's about as hot
okay?
as a polar
You go your
sleeping
way,
bag.
and I'll go mine.
And if you see the eyes, you can see out of the eyes, but the eyes were here. You know, looking directly ahead, there was nothing I could see. So I had to tilt the head slightly one way or another in order to see what was in front of me, and it was still an extremely limited view.
I think I'm just gonna stand here and take that, huh?
Matt, you're very, very choppy, and I have no
We
video.
may have a situation.
Take it back! Take it back! Take
Is this man bothering you?
This is no man!
Hey, 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 hey,
Oh,
hey.
Sorry. Our friend's dehydrated. That humid Indiana air.
Yeah, hey, you guys, totally would have taken those Ewoks.
Hi. Hey, Ewoks!
I forgot those lines too.
Hey, how's it going, man?
Jason Bowman of the designer of Pathfinder. Who to high five. Here we are, obviously, at the Gen Con main hall. Processed chop.
Good game. Well played.
How are you doing this? Were you just pretending not to play because I need a pity victory because I'm a girl? I'm 5-1 today, dude.
Hey, whoa, not what he's thinking at all. I mean, you're, you being a lady.
Process shut.
Mind, right? Do okay?
So Trin, everyone on Trin's side of the table in this scene, he's actually in front of a green screen, and Ben grabbed the background plate while we were at Gen Con so that we could send set to connect our Iberian corner of the card room with the wider room that we filmed actually at the convention 3 months prior.
Shoot.
And here is Andy.
You got a pretty mouth.
No, I did not write that. Andy ad-libbed that because
Bucks to Hewd.
it's hilarious and
Summons
terrible.
to the Queen.
It is as I feared. War has come to Holden. The dread army of Ikshasa marches against us.
At the very least, we can stop wondering when they'll come.
The undead are already burning our crops, blading our fields.
Starvation deck.
They aim to starve us out.
If for anything, we can thank them for using consistent tactics. One moment. What quest awaits us? To Pale Mountain?
We need to stop an army, not have questions answered.
The Apple of Life, then?
No one's died. Besides, we'd never complete it.
Why wouldn't I complete it?
Because they'd never find your body. This card needs to be torn in half to activate the quest reward. It's a rare. A Gen Con participation prize from '98. There were only 500 of these ever printed. Just slide that back in your deck.
Then where are we bound with the dead at our door?
You know, this is a
Legolas on your farm.
some allusion to, in the earliest days of CCGs, they actually did have some cards that called for their own destruction. I think there was a rare magic card called the Chaos Orb that, I don't know if you had to destroy it, but it worked by dropping it onto the table and it would flip down whenever it landed on, exploded or something. But I wanted to create something super high stakes and sort of first generation TCG. Now here, this character, Scott, played by Gabriel Conlon, like 6'15" and weighs maybe 70 pounds. And he's 1/3 of a fantastic comedy troupe that also includes Jesse Peter and Aaron Buman, who plays Byron. The group is El Good Times, and they had what I still think is the funniest web series to come out of Seattle, And At, which is the and is the ampersand and then the at symbol. They did some stuff about 6 to 8 years back.
You again?
And of course, here is the Jin from Journey Quest, and here we directly tie Journey Quest to
harvest to
gamers.
feed your people, and torrential rain to turn your home battlefield to mud. This will stymie the Dread Army and buy you enough time to quest for victory.
Yay!
Yeah, that sounds good.
Well?
Yes, we'll do that.
You actually have to say
We wish for a
bountiful harvest, which is so in the season and pairs quite
So,
nicely with
Sharon,
torrential
is
rain.
this the regular or extended cut?
This is the version that is available for free on the Fantasy Network. So, whatever that is.
And here is the bounty.
That is a bounty. You're the first guy to knock a legacy player out of the tournament. Okay, so these you can totally redeem for other cards, and this book is a history of the game.
That book does not actually exist. Please stop suggesting that I write it.
Okay. So he can play.
Okay, so he can play. Hell yes, he can play.
You lost. To whom? Who the hell is that? Some punk throwing vintage quests out of Holden? Quests? You lost to a quest deck?
The idea behind the vintage quests was that because Cass is using Leo's cards, and these cards are so old that they would actually have an earlier art style. Bit on art style. So Magic: The Gathering has changed the style of its cards a couple of times since the original cards that came out in the early mid 90s. Same happened with L5R. They had a very old style that was very unique, but that sometimes felt cluttered or hard to read. So they simplified it a couple of times over the course of the game. So one of the original ideas was that if we saw close-ups of Cass's cards, they would have an earlier throwback art style to them. But that turned out to be just too much on top of an already massive project with a lot of art design requirements. However, one thing that was fun when talking to Todd Rowland, who we saw doing the announcements in the actual AEG polo at the AEG booth, was when we were discussing what Legend of the Romance of the Nine Empires logo should look like. He said, so should it be something that we looked like it was thrown together in the 90s and is crappy, and that we've tried to change a few times, but the player base keeps saying, no, use the original? I was like, yes, absolutely. Which apparently is a thing that's happened. Funny trivia bit. The original logo on the back of the Legend of the Five Rings cards from the first several years of the game, they had to change because they were hit with a lawsuit by the International Olympic Committee, which has the copyright on 5 interlocking rings.
Is locked in a quantum state.
That's
your
kind
world
of
exists only as possibilities.
So they had to change the back design of the cards, which meant that you had to, if you're playing with older cards, sleeve your cards because you couldn't have backs of different cards in your deck because it could give clues as to the age or what you had in play.
When this version of events fades, it will do so as a dream, but one you will not remember, for it will never have occurred. And you will return to the place you always do.
I am summoned to the Queen.
with no memory that
So how long did it take to film all of the in the cards segments?
This can't possibly
It
be
actually,
true.
the non-action stuff went fairly quickly. As you see, much of our shot design in there was fairly simple. And I mean simple in the sense of basic rather than simplistic. There were a few camera moves. Some of them were digital. We put, tracing tags on the back of the green screen in a few places so that the background could be matched at an appropriate velocity to create the illusion of parallax. But because we were indoors, we didn't have to worry about planes flying overhead or lighting conditions changing as they do in the Northwest, especially during the spring and summer as the clouds roll over. You're in clouded conditions for a moment, and the sun breaks through, and several thousand more kelvins of candlelight are hitting you from the sun, or it starts to rain or drizzle or whatnot. So we didn't have those considerations that we had to work around. And the cast was really dialed into their stuff, so it actually went fairly quickly once we were actually rolling. The difficulty of filming in front of a green screen or filming multiple things in front of a green screen is that you have to rotate your sets, right? When we're filming outside, if we want to do a turnaround, we just turn the camera around. If we're filming in front of a green screen and we want to do a turnaround, you would see the crew area and all of the lights and equipment. So we have to rotate the set pieces to put them in an appropriate position in front of that same green screen when we're filming there. So that was something that took a lot of time. And then, of course, you have to match light to make sure that the source is coming from an appropriate direction to maintain the illusion. And I love this bit here as the world is fading out, and Myriad makes her wish to actually remember the last of the wishes from the man.
Variation this time around. I'm surprised you haven't.
And that is our turning point in the film, at least in this section of the story.
You only used 2 of you.
I wish to
And
remember.
it turned out quite well with the scoop. Here we are back in the hall. Now here's a sort of an experiment that we did that seems really odd and out of place unless you know the context. And that is when we were filming, when we were running the Kickstarter for this, one of the perks was that Matt Forbeck, who just earlier that year had run a Kickstarter to do 12 novels in 2012, one a month, each one a trilogy in a different setting. One of the novels he was working on was set at a gaming convention. It was a murder mystery at a gaming convention. And we had been friends. We are friends through the convention circuit. We're the cool people that you meet over the years doing these cons.
Okay.
And we discussed how we could make the properties work together. And so Leo's character, Leo Lamb, discovers a body in the convention hall in Matt's novel, which I'm blanking on the name right now. I'm so sorry, and I don't have it in front of me. And so we decided we filmed that bit and put it in the movie so that there is this transmedia connection between Matt Forbeck's novel and Gamers 3, where Leo temporarily crosses over. Now here we are at this gaming room that we built is supposed to be another part of the convention. It's not. It's back in Washington. We're filming at a Best Western, which at the time was one of the only locations we could get because we needed a ballroom that we could stage a bunch of stuff in. And our production office was just a hotel room that we rented. And the reason I remember this, Mark.
Yeah.
Minion knife.
Minion blood all over
The reason I remember that so harsh is twofold. One, that was the day that the grip truck got a flat
The Lord works in
and was late, which of course terrified us because we had so much we had to work through that day. And it was also the day that the room that, I don't know if it was a matter of the hot water was turned off or it was not expected because of the normal check-in times or whatnot, but I played Chibi Chan.
Or did you just spring it out?
I sweated like a dying goose, like I did, anytime I put that damn suit on. And then I had to shower. So I went to the production office in the bathroom to shower, and it was only cold water. It was, I mean, it woke me up. Even now I'm shuddering a bit, but came out of that not exactly happy. Here we are back on the, in Burien, at the production
That wasn't so bad, now was it?
shop, I think it's called.
It's been so long.
Which looked like the murder house because of the weird little half shed that was in front of it. Oh god damn it, I forgot that scene. And then the spraying water.
Chibi-chan! Well, we've lost Gary.
I actually kind of want to watch this now. I've forgotten so much of it.
You've got a lot of nerve showing your face.
I think Gary and Chibi-chan is my favorite subplot. Just watching this poor man's descent into madness.
It's so bizarre.
Mm-hmm.
We filmed, and I know it's on the disc, but we filmed this rant that didn't make it into the movie, that we filmed at Gen Con, where... So, backing up a bit. I often find when I'm writing a film, it comes to me in individual scenes. During the brainstorming, during the initial development, and sometimes those scenes make it in. A lot of times it turns out that something that inspired the movie itself, there's not an easy place to fit it in later on. And one of those was the scene that we filmed, which was Lodge's rant about canceled shows, where he was trying to commiserate with Gary, and beginning with, look, I understand why it happened, but you get over it.
I'm ready.
But then, of course, by the time he's done with the rant, he's completely not over his favorite shows getting canceled, but he kind of sides with Gary at the end. And each of the shows that is mentioned there are ones that were... I mean, Firefly was obviously the big one that a lot of people know, but the other two shows that you mentioned were shows that were very deeply personal to me. First one was that were canceled early. First, which was The 100 Lives of Blackjack Savage, which was a Disney show that came out when I was, I think, 12 or 13. And great premise, but didn't last past, I think, like a half season. And then Boston Common, which came out in 96, 97 when I was a freshman in college, and I really identified with the main character. And at the time, it was canceled. It was something like the 8th most watched sitcom on TV. So it just made no sense for why it would be canceled. They made it like a season and a half, but it was in this weird... cohort of shows that did not make it to DVD and did not make it to the streaming services, which is a shame because I still think it's Anthony Clark's best work, which you may have only otherwise seen him as he played the gay hairdresser in The Rock in one scene. But he's a southern comedian, and his shtick was fantastic. The Lodge and Joanna subplot.
Joanna, will you?
I don't really have anything to add to this.
No!
I don't remember it well enough to
I mean, it's in the room.
discuss it. I don't really like embarrassment-based humor. It's not a thing I prefer to watch, and it's not a thing I prefer to do, so it's not a typical bit. Are there any questions at this point? I've kind of been rambling. This is my fault.
We've got, was that an actual Gen Con staffer in the shot where, I think it was when Gary jumped over the table?
That was not, that was Josh Glazer of Paizo at the time. And at that table were Mike Seliker and some other game designers there who Gary interrupts.
What ring?
I had a bunch of cameos in this movie as well. I love that reaction there. They timed it perfectly.
You thought that was free? It's a family heirloom.
Oh yeah,
was my grandmother's ring.
Did Christian actually jump over that table?
Yes.
For my sister. From
Christian is he's thin but he's wiry. He's got some springs.
She lost some earrings once.
He's funny story about Christian and about Scott. I had known each of them individually years before they auditioned for Darkness Rising and years before I was a filmmaker. I was interested in improv comedy, and in the late 90s I joined a troupe in Tacoma called The Tokens. And when I originally joined, Scott Brown was a member of that troupe, and then later on, Christian Doyle was a member of that troupe. And the thing I remember about Christian was he was the guy who put me in an actual chokehold on stage once during a performance, and was effective. And I'm like, I'm actually choking right now. And then years later, I bumped into him when I was a student, when I was a teacher's assistant at Pierce College, and he was a barista. And at the time, we caught up. How you been? I haven't seen you. You still doing the improv thing? No, I'm doing theater and whatnot. What have you been doing? Actually, I've been doing film. I have a movie that's the sequel to a stupid horror film that we made called Dead Camper Lake that's coming out. Would you be interested in coming and see? And he came and saw it. And then both Scott and Christian happened to audition for Darkness Rising, and the rest is history. They're two of my best friends. Now this scene I love. This is so much fun to write because it accomplished so many things for us, logistically and narratively. Right? This was, we had a whole bunch of high-level backers who had pledged to be in a scene. Now the risk of a backer character is you never know what their acting talent is going to be. And even if people have a lot of experience in theater, Madeleine, you know this, it is a completely different experience being in front of a camera as opposed to being on stage. You know, when you're on stage, you have rehearsed it ad infinitum from the beginning to the end. The audience is distant and barely perceived, whereas in front of the camera, the camera is right here, the lights are bright, you're going to do the same thing over and over and over again until it's done, and then you're never going to do it again. And so it's really jarring for people who've only had stage before. So it's a roll of the dice. You never know if the people who are coming in are going to excel in the role or not. So we had to create a scene with a bunch of backer roles in it. We also wanted to show all of the 9 empires in a scene, and we wanted to illustrate that LARP was a thing. So all of these came together to create the scene where everyone is so expertly acted poorly. And let me tell you this. And this is a key to especially to Connor and to Trin here. It is hard to act poorly or to look hammy or whatnot because you work so hard to not be that way, and yet our folks who did come in were so great at it and so comfortable in the scene that we created as
seriously, those costumes
sort of security that it could not work, because if someone comes in and the performance isn't great, it works because it's LARP, and they knocked it out of the park. Like these guys, our Ord came in and did their shot in one take. This was at the con here. This was at ZOE Con 1 at the LARP here, and
nice. Barely see the hotel.
I mean, it makes for a really cool scene of getting to kind of a little bit more establishing of the lore of it and like the actual culture amongst the players of the game.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. I loved how everyone embraced their roles, and this is one that Ben directed really, really well. And let's stage these people over here, let's stage these people over here, as we all kind of come in and announce who we are without saying it directly. Yeah, turned out great. And here's Sarah Moore that smacks him on the butt. And winds up sitting by the head writer.
Where were we?
Oh, you were belittling us.
So much for your vaunted technology.
So how is it? I haven't seen you at Attorney. Vintage
so the squid heads in the background.
What
was behind that?
No idea.
Well, enjoy it while you can.
That's lore. If I'm going to avoid owning or trying to figure out until I'm forced to. I don't know how to make that work.
Really?
Well, let's say that was the equivalent of the Magic Unglued set, where they did a comedy set that came out once of just goofy concepts, and they were LARPing as those characters. That's the official answer.
Okay.
Okay.
It's canon now.
Yes, canon. So here's a bit. So we showed those chairs against the wall. And yet, of course, you can't film against the wall and get behind them, so we cheated them forward in the chairs in order to get the camera behind them and maintain our stage line.
We can't risk open warfare.
Movie magic! Like here, James Herbert, this guy on the left, you think, who looks like Gary Busey, you think, oh, that's obviously a trained actor. No, this is one of our backers who came in and played the role. Just like this little dude comes in.
We'll have no dealing
from the cult of Shadhu Gem.
Let the dead
and it turned out to be perfect.
But if one of us falls, we
Plead.
all fall.
The strong of faith will prevail.
Forget it. Waste of time.
You really need to get over this minor dispute with the displays.
Minor dispute, they killed our god.
And we do it again.
Not helping.
Miss Snarl.
There will be no accord. It's not enough that doom is on the
That's an
march. We
interesting
must be
background.
complicit in our own downfall.
Interesting.
And where are you?
I forgot how
Because you're
complicated this
clearly not
film
here.
is. I mean, just in the sense of how much went into it, how many characters and how many sets and whatnot.
None of this matters. Nothing happened.
Again, most of this was a lot of this was a blur. Like I know I worked on it, I know I wrote it, I know it was there, and we were making cogent decisions on the film, but so much of it is a blank just because of when it fell in my own personal timeline.
To representatives of the 9
Cisco Martin here plays the undead emissary of Ikshasa. Did a great job on this makeup, especially because Jessica they put the bony ridges on part of the chest plate for her as well to bring out the skeletal nature of the character.
Our world is not determined by us.
I don't believe you.
Yeah, there's a definite noticeable escalation between these first three movies. Like, kind of, you get progressively more intense production, and I think it really shows.
Well, I mean, the first one honestly cost us about $500 to make. And that was, I financed that over the course of like 10 months. So it wasn't like, here's $500. It was like, I'll pay for this permit here, or this fabric there, or this rental over here. And everything else was, most of the costume pieces, all the props on the original Gamers was stuff that we borrowed or the people donated. And I wrote it so that we would be filming in places that I knew, like the pre-World War I era trenches on the Olympic Peninsula for the dungeon, and the Sprinker climbing rock near PLU, which we made our castle and such. And then Darkness Rising had a budget of, I think the original budget was like $40,000. It was an all-volunteer bit, except for we paid our director of photography and we paid our gaffer because we needed it to look at least broadcast quality. Because when we started meeting with producers from Los Angeles, including the producers who co-produced Darkness Rising, Cindy Rice and John Frank Rosenblum, and whom we had a number of other projects with, what they told us was the thing about the original Gamers is it's great, but we can't do anything to it. One, the technical quality, not the humor, not the narrative, the technical quality of it is too low. And also, it's not feature-length. You have this weird 45-minute thing. It's not long enough to make a movie. It's not short enough to make a pilot. And yet we've sold, tens of thousands of copies of it on DVD. So for Darkness, it was, it has to look good enough and it has to be feature-length. And so we did that, and this one was our first Kickstarter to crack, I think, $400,000, which blew us away. And at the time, this was the highest-grossing Kickstarter film, and that was a record that we held for almost 36 hours
You beat the lowest-ranking member
before it was beaten by a short film produced by Charlie Kaufman.
Congratulations are not yet in order.
I'm going to close the door because I hear children are melting down.
And some of the story had this whole little alliance thing going.
I have no dealings with the Lesser Kingdom.
Well, we've entered the borderlands at bedtime, and so there's they're fighting a valiant rearguard action against a foe they cannot hope to defeat. My children think they can outrun bedtime. It's does not work. Notice how long that door stayed closed. Hi, Wesley. What's up? Okay. You can go play with my phone. It's on my book next to my chair. Close the door, please, okay? Thank you. So now here's a thing also taken from Legend of the Five Rings. And I love the history of this game so much I put so many of those elements in it. At the, I think it was the second or third Gen Con, there was an event called the Day of Thunder, where in the storyline of Legend of the Five Rings, the evil emperor, the evil god Fu Leng, who had inhabited the body of the emperor, was either going to plunge the empire into 1,000 years of darkness or be overthrown by one of the seven thunders from the different clans. And the way that they worked this out was, if a Shadowlands player wins, Fu Lang is triumphant and we have 1,000 years of darkness. If a non-Shadowlands player wins, that player's clan champion, or that player's clan's thunder, becomes the new emperor. And so, yes, I don't know where it is either, though. Well, you're going to have to try to find it somewhere else. Okay, can you close the door there, please? Parenthood is grand. Let's see, what was I saying? Right. So the writers for that game, at the time, did not know how the story was going to resolve. So the head writer wrote 8 different storylines, I think it was, one for each faction's potential victory. And as the last player from each faction was eliminated from the tournament, they tore that envelope up. And then at the very end of that, the Lion and the Crane player who faced each other in the finals decided they weren't going to fight for the story prize. We came here to defeat Fu Lang, not to fight each other. So the writer tore up those 2 envelopes and wrote an entirely new story. So that bit with the envelopes and the storylines does come from CCG history.
I would expect to find Gary here.
Here we are again at the original ZOE Con,
I thought you hated
in what was our main hall, which we set up for anime. And then, of course, oh god, I forgot that we put Black Ninja Vampires on the movie screen for that.
Leia kind of killed the con.
Yes, Betty?
I hate that I'm
You
stuck.
can ask Mommy to call my phone and maybe find it that way.
Oh,
I don't really know where it is right now.
to me. Gasp.
It's not in my pocket. I don't know where it is. Yeah.
It's just.
You're gonna have to keep looking for it, buddy. I'm sorry.
What the hell?
Why? Close the door, please.
So, question from the chat. Did you already cover what led to using L5R in Gen Con?
Well, L5R is because I love the game. And I thought that if we were going to do a CCG-based game, it had to be a game like one that had a heavy story to it. And so that's why we chose Romance of the Nine Empires and modeled it very heavily on the history of Legend of the Five Rings. As for Gen Con, we had been, our first Gen Con that we went to, I think it was 2003 or 2004. And that's when we had the first Gamers DVDs, and we wound up selling like a few hundred of them, which blew us away. And became we became sort of a thing that you did at Gen Con, the screenings. And after enough time, we met a number of other people there, other authors and game designers and people from the convention.
Why pirates?
And when it came time, we were saying, hey, we're going to be doing another gamers movie. We talked to, or I should say, Ben talked to the folks at Gen Con and said, yeah, we can be involved. We'd love to be involved. How can we be involved? And so we talked about, can we film on the main stage? So when it came time to write this, that was one of the things that was, many of the things that were very challenging were, here are all the things that the movie needs to accomplish. You've got to have all these characters from Darkness Rising, they have to have their own character arcs. You have to fit in filming on the Gen Con main stage for whatever reason.
I don't deserve you.
Our filming at Gen Con will be limited because you've got a live convention going on at the same time. And then we're going to fit in the trading card game thing.
Exactly.
So it was, and I actually found it somewhat helpful to have sort of clearly defined lines of this is what the movie needs, this is the box the movie needs to fit into. Because it made defining it a bit easier than just having carte blanche free reign. I like to know what the limitations are or where the boundaries are
makes me not want to marry you.
play within.
All right, Lost, your time be up.
Hang on, no.
I know you said one true thing in here, Kevin. You don't deserve me.
Joe.
The pirates thing is a thing that we've seen at Gen Con as well.
Come on, Joe.
From pirate charity, you can pay them to kidnap one of your friends, and obviously they can't legally hold them there. But don't be a jerk and not do it.
I had last ones. He's next to you.
That's Jeremy Spray, our friend who we first met in California, and Hawk Robbins in there. The first time we met him, it was as a pirate larper. Actually came to my wife's birthday to an Italian restaurant, high-end Italian restaurant, dressed as a pirate, and did the whole pirate shtick. Horrified the maitre d'. It was fantastic. And so we knew, it's like I knew I had to put that character in the movie somewhere. So we did.
You too?
Yeah, but I tagged every card you played with this whole deck.
Oh, I see.
Right there.
You can't hear all the screaming and crying from the 3-year-old, which apparently is because she drew both on her brother's desk and on her mother's
We're switching
phone.
tactics.
So,
We're gonna lose to the
and
quest
then
deck.
got chewed out for that,
Come on, I
which
can
she
take
did not
this guy. You
appreciate.
don't need
And
to
so
take him. You need
that
to
is
kill
why
off his heroes.
there's a
You
lot
worked
of
hard for conquest.
angry
Let's use
crying in
them.
the background.
Understand me? Sweep
That's a lovely
the
evening.
leg.
Of course, I work with actors, so I'm used to angry crying.
Yeah.
Well, coming?
That's Brian Reese, who at the time was the head designer of L5R.
Brilliant.
Brilliant!
The most peculiar land.
We've seen too much of their army for this to be a split attack. Holden is not the target. We are.
Why, we're but 2 people.
2 people tying up their army. Let them pursue us. It means Holden's safe.
Is it now? I gave you an out.
Giant fan.
Oh, I love the giant fan.
Oh, right, because she makes scofflaw here.
Unerring strike.
That won't
More processed shots.
next action.
Yeah.
There's the guy who won
About one of your heroes.
won the tournament at the beginning.
So, who's for the chop?
So
That's cool.
the card props, how many of those were made?
They our production design team, which led by our production designer Jordan Mitchell, did a ton of those, and wound up having to sleeve them because they weren't actually, the images weren't printed on the cards. They were printed on paper that were then inserted into the card sleeve on top of an actual card to give it that rigidity in order to make them look real.
Hey.
Hey.
But yeah, they had to make up all these cards there. So we tried to be very careful in the cards that we actually saw, because on a table or in a hand at a time. And the issue, one of the issues is that here's where she mentions that she actually won the tournament that brought Done to Real to Holden. The issue with the timing on this film is that we were filming. And AEG had agreed to, we're going to make a card game out of this. But they agreed to that after seeing the crowd's reaction in the final match scene at Gen Con 2012, and then the card game came out in 2013. So we were actually filming the movie before we had an established rule set. So anytime they're tossing cards down or pointing at them or turning them in one way or another, that's all just the equivalent of tactile gibberish. You know, no one's actually doing anything. Here you, oh god, I love this scene here with Lester and the Shadow, actually weirding out the Shadow. This is a good movie, I forgot.
A veritable chandelier.
Need to watch this again.
And then you talk dirty to it, maybe show it a little Hydra porn.
So the Hydra Dick strategy did come out of the Paizo warehouse, along with a bunch of other jokes and gags and setups that I will never put onto film because we would never be able to fund anything after that.
But what do you do with all the severed Hydra peni?
Cock golem.
Naturally.
Yeah, just like a modified flesh golem, but it triples in size when you try and grapple it. Oh, horrendous breath weapon.
To gracefully.
I enjoy the actors in the background here because Lodge and Joanna's characters aren't there, so they're super rigid, whereas Scott is, and he's just bored.
So, gaming? Anyone?
I don't know how they managed not to break character in this next bit, where he puppeteers them.
Yes, we can. We can still play. See?
Hey, everyone. This campaign's dangerously unboring. But don't worry, I'm here to fix it. First off, we're gonna avoid combat whenever possible,
and the kissing by making them touch heads. Giant dolls.
Take everyone's feelings into account, especially.
I like the head movement mimicking. It's
Girl stuff. Kiss me up, you big handsome pally. Mwah.
I don't know how they didn't just bust up.
Can't even tell the difference.
Oh man, you can
And how
see
are you
them
going
kind
to
of
play
like
without
getting
a game
really
master?
close.
Who's controlling me, for instance?
Finally! If it's either of them, we're starting now.
This is such an absurd scene.
Deliver us from the undead.
Please, win the tournament.
Save our heroes.
Take this in tribute.
Who is it?
Another bunch of freaks convinced I'm their messiah.
Is this Myrrh?
Is this Myrrh?
Close the door before Gary gets loose.
Look at the win, baby.
One thing we didn't really super well communicate is that collision right there is where Gary steals
Hey guys, could you just give us a minute?
Natalie's taser to use against Chibi-chan later on.
Oh, okay.
How was that?
We lost Gary containment, and now a bunch of
One thing that
lovers are in my room
does
over
amuse me in this bit is how our
naming rights if I beat
hair and makeup department, who saved us in a very funny way, that I'll tell you later,
sorry, I did not mean
decided
to
that
get hopes up.
Trin needed a different glam hairstyle for basically every script day in the film, rather than a standard, this is Natalie's hair. It's like it's different every single day, but in a way that would take hours normally to set up, which is it's cool. I dig it. It turned out nicely.
Hot gamer chick.
Which is not a thing I was expecting when putting it into the script, and that's why you hire your department heads. They find things to increase the value of the production in ways you wouldn't even think of.
Know anything else about me?
Trin actually wrote this speech here. I was struggling with it with this moment, and she said, "Well, let me take a try at it." Came up with the phrasing and the dialogue at the end of the year, and like that really works. So we're going to put that in. Talk about an actor really being in their character and identifying with them. This is part of what made it hard to let the character go and pack her away once the film was wrapped.
All I've ever seen is these asshats tearing you down and ignoring you. They're fawning all over me, and you've been kicking ass for what, years?
Go join the legacy. You belong with them.
Natalie. Natalie!
Hey,
This is one of my favorite
you're
bits.
coming with us.
Really? Because it looks like I'm doing the exact opposite.
I love the immediate. Okay, yeah, this is a fight.
Maybe you need me to explain how things work.
Just
around here?
I love
But I said you're
sort
coming
of
with
the
us.
setup for a movie trope and then immediately subvert it. Especially
I
if
thought we were
it's
fighting.
someone
Hemophiliac, you dickwad!
boasting or bragging or otherwise or trying to flex power that they don't actually have, then immediately subverting it.
Bleed the way, I'll go. Just don't bleed on me.
I think this is the one time we showed blood in the entire Gamers franchise. It's Andy getting punched. And the snapping at the end. And a great shot suggested by our DP there.
Question from the chat.
Mm-hmm.
Sharks or jets?
Sharks. Better dancing. So, Christian has this tradition of doing at least one day at Gen Con in his pajamas on the convention hall. And I don't know if it began with this movie or what, but or it was well established at this point. But yep, that's what he was doing. Here we are just visiting various friends on the convention hall floor as we go through it. And then here we are at ZOECon 1. And this actor, Bill Johns, is a fantastic comedic actor. He actually voices the Wicked King in Journey Quest as well. Now, this is one of my great regrets for this film, is that I chickened out when it came time to do the stunt of getting kicked. In the script, it was a full-on WWE drop kick on Chibi-chan, and Christian was certain he could execute it. We had a stunt guy there that day, or a stunt coordinator was saying we should do a snap kick instead, which we wound up doing. And the reason is I chickened out. And I chickened out because I couldn't see well enough out of the helmet and the head piece to know when the kick was coming. So I said, let's just do that. Let's do the snap kick instead. And I regret it. I was wrong, Christian. I was wrong. I should have taken the full drop kick.
Like we're gonna forget it was.
I'm hugging kids in the background. The funny thing is, one of those children at the time was 3-year-old Emily.
All of those.
And I mentioned before how damn hot that costume is. So between takes, I'm taking this hat off and getting water, and costumers are fanning me. And I'm sitting there between takes, gasping, and I hear this little Emily says, "Buddy, put your head back on! Put your head on, buddy! Buddy, your head's off!"
Sucks away all the ratings. We never even got a chance.
She was very upset that I took my head off.
That is so crazy, you know?
I mean, I would be shocked if Chibi-chan didn't traumatize at least one child.
Hello, Chibi-chan.
Stole his mother. Yeah, should have taken the drop kick.
Yeah!
Still works.
Rabbit season! Hey.
Blast him.
Yeah, we got Darth Vader in our film, and Boba Fett. And there's the Journey Quest. You saw that, right? Mm-hmm. That was the perp dropping his hat.
Yep.
And the Force push. Why? I don't know. But it worked. He splits them off, and he gets clotheslined. And right there, Boba Fett was more effective than he was in Return of the Jedi.
Yeah.
And there's Alvin Johnson, the head of the 501st, in the Stormtrooper armor, barking at everyone to get out.
Let's go. Move along. Move along.
Now, Mr. Cassidy.
The legacy meeting room.
Suppose you're wondering why you've been brought here today.
No, not really.
Yeah. There's another one sort of like that.
One finds in classic
Communicating
is the belief
tropes of established sort of cliche setups, and the cast just not responding to it at all. I enjoy that. I enjoy Brian's earnestness and sinister nature in the scene, and I love Brian with a Y, the sinister nature, and then Brian with an I, just not giving him anything.
No.
No.
No, I'm gonna call you.
So,
Lewis.
question from the chat.
All right.
Like a Lewis to me.
Did you ask the 501st how they handled the heat in their suits?
Not really, no.
I didn't. I should have.
Somewhere.
You're a good player, yes.
Some of them were desert troopers, so I figured they had
wise to ally with us.
And there's a little bit of a difference between plastic insulation with just a body armor layer and like a fully padded animal costume.
That suit is awful. That suit, I would not wish it upon my worst enemy.
So I know the head is still around. Is the actual body of it still around?
Chibi-chan made an appearance at Christian and Maggie's wedding. Full costume. So, and that was only, I think that was February of 2018. So, as far as I know, the body's still out there. I don't think you can fully destroy Chibi-chan. As long as the head survives, the body will regenerate.
It'll just keep coming back stronger.
That's just there to keep people invested.
Stronger and stronger.
And after we kill Questing, and I win tomorrow, a couple of years, the only players left will be guys like us. You could be a part of that.
So, interesting thing, there was an actual, I based the legacy very loosely off of a group of L5R players that called themselves the Dynasty, who were a lot of elite characters, elite players who had banded together to create certain story results that weren't as popular with the story base. And I don't mean to mischaracterize them and say that they were jerks or anything like that. They weren't. They were just really high-level players who exerted a lot of leverage on the game's story decisions because they had the ability to win tournament after tournament after tournament. And apparently, after the movie came out, a few of them met up and said, "Is this how they actually see us? Is this how we appear to people?" Yeah. Anyway, this obviously we didn't actually light a fire in the garbage can. That was a lighting gig with just a little gel and electric light and some strategically burned props. Let us see what was at stake. So here we are. This is actually when we're filming on the main stage, and we have 600 extras. I've never directed that many people before.
Can't we just accept that he's
Here,
not coming?
we're back on the stage in Burien. All these close-ups that you're seeing here are on the stage in Burien, where we don't need the crowd. Anytime we turn around and you see the crowd, that's what we filmed at Gen Con in August. This is all the stuff we filmed in Burien in November, 8 years ago. Here we are outside. My God, was it sweltering. And that's not, I mean, that's just a furniture dolly that we've got him on. He's not actually lashed to it.
I heard about what happened. It's a shame.
So what was the thought process behind the Lecter getup?
That he'd been caught and arrested or whatever, detained by the 501st and kicked out of his hotel room. It's ridiculous, I know.
I played in some of the tournaments that helped write the early chapters.
Yeah?
Now, if you have been, this we filmed, I think it was like 9 or 10 in the morning because we're in shadow at this point, which is the only way we were able to get through it because if you've been to Indianapolis in August, it is sweltering. It's over 100 most of the time that we're there. The air is heavy and humid, and the water tastes like it runs straight from Satan's butthole. I don't know what it is about the tap water there, but it is awful. Like out here in Washington, you can drink the tap water and it's fine. This is a place that I get a visceral reaction from it. It's so bad.
Things like a laser and puts you in a state of no mind.
A friend of mine who's from Indianapolis said that the reason why that is because Indianapolis is one of only 2 major American cities that's not built on a river or a body of water. I said, how is that possible? He said, well, when the founders of my state had to decide where to put their capital, they folded their map in half, lengthwise, and then they folded it in half widthwise. And then they opened it up and they pointed to the center and said, that's where our city will be. And that's Indianapolis.
Yeah, it's this way.
Yeah.
So here we are back at actual Gen Con. Which, I mean, talk about production value. We had 1 hour to knock all these out. We had, I think it was 5 cameras and 4 different camera operators filming all this stuff. Now, I'm on the side there with John Zinser, who is a friend and the head of AEG, who we met and was a fan of the movies at various Gen Cons. And we had emailed and months and months back when just said, hey, we're thinking of doing a new gamers movie, and we thought about doing it as a CCG. And you know what would be really cool is if it were a fictitious game that AEG could present, because you guys already have all the all the graphics and the iconography and whatnot. Would you be perhaps interested in that? Thinking, I mean, he's not going to want to play with us. He had this very successful game coming. He got back like the same day, like, absolutely, let's make this happen. This is going to be great.
When I started, that
and
was
apparently,
but then,
friends who is
against my will, I got invested.
My headphones just ran out of battery. Can you still hear me?
The story.
Yeah, we can still hear you.
All right, good. So I'll have to plug this in later. Anyway, Sarah Korn, who's a L5R player and a good friend, was present here, and what she heard was in that moment after Natalie loses her tournament bit and gets cheered by the crowd, everyone erupted, and there was this to be in the room at that time was this astonishing moment of group emotion. It was so positively charged, and it was so supportive. And I think Sarah said that she cried, and she saw John Zinser turn to Todd Rowland and say, we're making this game. And the funny bit about that, and I love this speech from Connor here, that he matched his energy months later with what he did to the crowd. I mean, and this is another thing, too. If you've played, someone was cosplaying as Perf in the audience there, which is remarkable, because this was just after Season 1. This I think we were filming. Season 2 I don't think it had come out yet by the time we were filming this. But he's matching his energy, feeding off of a 600-person audience in a gigantic room, and then matching that energy on a sound stage
with just the crew and no audience. Like, it's remarkable. This is for Countermay!
This is for Countermay!
Now, when it came time to rehearse, because we were able to get into this room for an hour or so before, early in the day, several hours before we were going to actually film and figure out the lighting rigs and whatnot. And I blocked it out with the actors so that we wouldn't have to do the blocking during our 1 hour of actual filming. And
Thank you. Oh my. Okay,
and
good.
it came time to do the bit with Trin on, okay, so after you lose, you're going to come down here, and then the audience cheers you, and you have the triumphant fist pump. And she's like, I can do that. I don't really get it, but yeah, I can do that. And then in the moment that it actually happened, she got it, and her reaction there is completely 100% genuine in that magic moment of support roaring out of the crowd. That was fantastic. I love that bit. I love this bit too.
You're gonna keep doing this until you get whatever it is.
So a funny bit,
so you just go.
not to take anything away from this scene, because I love these two actors, but so that you can see it when we go back to the tournament scene. I mentioned before there's about a 3-month gap between when we're filming the crowd stuff and when we're filming the close-up stuff, right? And in between the Gen Con and the Seattle shoots, Brian went to a hairdresser.
Oh no.
And said, I'm in a movie, I have to match my haircut from a bit ago, so, I just take an inch off the top. They left him with an inch.
Oh no.
They cut him really low. And the problem with that was, it wasn't so stark that we couldn't see it in most scenes. Like in any scene that was set entirely in Seattle, you didn't notice. But in the scene where he was cutting, we was on the stage with the crowd, and then in the close-ups, his hair was doing this with every cut, long then short, then long then short. So this is a major continuity error we have to figure out some way to overcome. What do? This is the actual head of the founder of True Dungeon in this scene here, who we have to get past. So our hairdresser came up with a solution. She bought a wig, put it on Brian, and gave him his own haircut. So in the close-ups of the final tournament scene, Brian is basically wearing Lego hair of his earlier hairdo to match continuity.
Oh my god, the things we do to try to match continuity.
Right. And here's Jeremy Spray, Grolnok and the voice of the Sword of Fighting from Journey Quest, and an amazing pirate cosplayer helping Lodge.
See that guy over there?
So is that his own costume?
He did, and this is actually True Dungeon. They let us film there. I think this was like 2 in the morning by the time we wrapped.
Oh wow.
Yeah. And of course, the scene that they're reenacting is the key over the fire pit in Temple of All Dooms. And here we have, over there in the background, we had our producer, one of our makeup effects guys, and our art designer were the other characters in this scene.
Fantasy, I know that.
In the group.
But the hero wins the girl, and that's how I.
I have to admit, I'm not, just like I'm not a very good CCG player, I am terrible at True Dungeon. Every time I've done it, I've died or not been of any use whatsoever.
Please.
So, using
you can't do
the trope of True Dungeon being a thing that you do at Gen Con is why we wanted to put it in. And then we had the option of actually filming in the actual True Dungeon setup, which brought its own, amazing production value. Okay. We couldn't pass it up.
Yeah, like when you get an opportunity like that, you have to find some way to get it in.
What have I done to deserve you?
I love this bit here with the turning it around on Lodge of his own sort of self-imposed, rules of how romance is supposed to work, and that you left something out by not doing it the correct or scripted way.
If that's all it takes for me, why does it take more for you?
Joe.
Kevin, you silly geek. You can't win me.
These two are so cute. There's a line we cut there where one of the other players, as they're kissing, turns to the GM and says, "Is this part of the encounter?"
Sort of totally broke in here,
But it kind of undercut the emotional moments.
I'm saving your ass, lover boy. You shall pass!
Joe, be careful!
Fly, fool!
And of course, Lodge is wearing the Converse Crystals t-shirt from original Demon Hunters back in '99.
Isn't that in... Isn't there a Culver's Crystal reference in every Gamers movie?
Just about. I think so.
So close.
Alright, so here we are back with the crowd.
Short. All right. It's hang on.
So there was a scene.
Huge one.
I know it's in the deleted scenes. I don't know if it's in this cut. But there's a scene where Joanna gets out of jail, as it were, out of the security office and meets up with Lodge. And after that, they bump into Cass right after he's won the tournament. And we had forgotten in that scene that Natalie had given him the green stripe, the green Holden makeup on his forehead, and we left that forehead mark off of Brian in the scene that we filmed, and so we couldn't use it because it didn't match the continuity.
Damn right.
Come on. This was fun. John Bogart, perfect villain, but sort of the non-evil antagonist character playing the Mooch. He wound up being perfectly cast. I remember we read a bunch of guys for the Mooch, and no one was really, no one was hitting what I had envisioned for the character. And then John came in and he was very close. And there's some stuff in it that I really liked. And said, can you try playing this again, but as a bored Roman emperor? And apparently he had just finished doing Julius Caesar or something like that. And so he went right into it and he nailed it. It was like, oh my god, that's perfect. Yes, this is our character.
Cannot wait to get my beer on.
Oh my.
No autographs, dude.
Now, this scene, what you don't see is the poor cleaning woman who had no idea what the hell we were doing, who had turned the corner right around the tasing and then fled. We didn't have a chance to talk to her or to explain. She just came around, saw a guy from the Matrix tasing a giant earth rabbit, and was like, nope, I'm done. I am out of here, and she beat it. And we never saw her again.
Oh man, so somewhere out there in the world, there's this poor woman who believes she was witness to crime.
So again, all this on the actual stage in Burien. Look at that wonderful lighting. There, the deep shadows creates. You think that they're on that stage in Gen Con, and we sell it with sound, and we sell it with the lighting.
And there's a map missing from the cache. Which map?
And here you'll notice, this is actually subtle enough that people haven't seen it, that's the only real-world background that we see in Countermag, is Pale Mountain, which of course is, and I get into this a bit in the Farther World Guide, Pale Mountain is a cross-world location that appears in a number of places at once. Here we have the fantastic Darlene Sellers, who of course reprised her role in Journey Quest 3, and will be in Journey Quest 4 as well, as the slightly kooky Oracle.
I love the Oracle.
Oh, she's fantastic. I don't know where the predilection toward feeding people their favorite treats came from.
I don't know, I like to think of her as like, people don't visit her very often, so when they do, she tries to like make them as happy as possible.
Since the quarantine began, she's made a lot more and more sense to me.
Yeah. Like, she's just been trying all these like baked good recipes, and she's just desperate for someone to try them.
Well, life's gotta get pretty boring if you know everything, or you know the answers to everything. Like, she knows what they want, so she's able to make it for them ahead of time. It must get pretty stale. All right.
To battle.
Quite liked Myriad. It's a pity another Buxtehude has to die because you two overestimated yourself.
Cass's shirt, as one designed by Jamie Chambers, the game designer behind who was behind the Cortex system and has a lot of stuff out there. And the shirt, it's a little bit covered by the lanyard. It says, real gamers do it on the table. Now this reveal that we have, where General Hain, who's this behorned, helmeted badass, from the Melchior faction takes off his helmet, and we see that it's the same actor who plays the Meech. This is a thing that actually happens happened in L5R, which is people who were just like legendary players or who won tournaments or who did great things for the game, even if they weren't necessarily great players but were great ambassadors for the game. And here's that wonderful moment with Trin and the crowd. Her actual genuine reaction. It hit her, she felt it. One of the regrets, and one of the things that we would have done if there were more time in this movie, is why I look back at it and thinking maybe it would have been better as a miniseries than a movie, was that we asked the audience to accept that Natalie is a great player, but we don't really show her being a great player, right? We see Cass's wins because the movie is from his point of view, but we don't see her playing and winning. We don't see her strategizing. We're asked to accept that she has won, and we build in some accolades that other players have for her and some tournament wins. And that was the thing that always struck me as, God, if we had more time, that's the thing I'd put in. Anyway, so here, because this is another tribute to what L5R and sometimes would do, they would take their great players in the game and they would name characters after them, or they would base characters after them, which is why we have the same actor playing General Hain as playing the Meech, which is implying that General Hain was a character based on the Meech, who he has then playing.
That's what I saw you doing.
Infinite recursion there. And also is helps inform the reveal when we learn that Sim Bucks to Hugh was based on Leo, and that the card at the end that Byron pulls out of his new expansion pack is based on Brian, or based on Cass, I should say.
Oh, so now you want an alliance.
Watch your tone. I'm one turn away from crushing your pathetic little army.
I love this deal with the devil moment here. I'll concede if you give up the thing that you started this quest for.
So here's my offer. Support Melchior. In exchange, we will meet the dread army in the field and delay them long enough for Buxtehude to quest for victory. Should you succeed,
we see that stained glass window throughout the movie behind the Queen. And then it's not until the end that we see who the art was based on.
Myriad will marry Prince Rannon to make our alliance permanent. Reject this offer and Holden burns. Accept this offer.
I remember in writing Queen Genevieve, modeling her, is showing my nerd cred, very much off of Captain Janeway.
Yeah. Yeah, there's actually, like, I do get a Janeway vibe from her.
This is my choice.
I've been rewatching a lot of the 90s Star Trek.
My answer is yes.
As I started a couple years ago. And now it's just, I love having something utopian to watch again. I'm in the middle of the way through season 3 of Voyager. So, yeah, I love that moment. You know, it's one of the things that, oh God, I was going into a genuine moment there, but one of the things that always never ceases to surprise me is how enough distance sometimes passes, you can look back at the projects and see what actually is really working well around them. Because for so long, when you're so close to a project, you look at it and all you can see is where I compromised, or where it didn't work, or where this piece wasn't quite right, or where the timing was off, or where the delivery didn't work, or where you didn't come up with the right line until 2 months after you wrapped, and you're just beating yourself up for how much better you could have made it, that you lose sight of the fact that it actually is enjoyable to so many people. Like this ridiculous scene here that Christian and Richard played so well, and this can be so hard for the. Here's the thing: comedy only works if it is absolutely real to the people in the scene, right? The opposite of comedy is not drama. The opposite of comedy is farce. Comedy only works when it is not funny to the people involved, when it is deadly serious to them. So here we have a man hallucinating a character from his favorite canceled anime. And I have to take two classically trained actors at the top of their craft and give them this absurd situation that they're in. And they played it so genuinely well, and it worked, and it's a moment of catharsis for Christian, and then I get hit with a rolled up carpet. I mean, it's works on a number of levels.
And all the deliciously
I absolutely love this scene. Just the absolute sincerity and like the soul crushing of accepting that like this show is gone now.
That costume is so it's just spot on.
Oh, I love the costume. And
Richard Sloniker had to act through that in the situation and did it so well.
There are also ninjas across the skies.
I love the dragon hair.
Mm-hmm. That's the thing I never understood about anime. Like, is that actual hair that's supposed to have? That it actually grew red and in a spiked ridge? That's the okay. I mean, I'll accept it. I had questions. Okay, getting weird now. Yeah.
Thank you, Hikaru. I think that I'm ready to hate productively again.
Part of what's fun about reviewing these movies is seeing a snapshot of your friends and family from 8, 10, 15 years ago. And it uncorks so many related memories of the world at that time, and what you thought was important and where you thought you were going and stuff. You know, movies are time capsules in that way. And
hello? A little help, please.
I love that he duct tapes over the fake mouth there.
Yeah, because he thinks it's a real thing.
Yeah, it's real to him.
An alliance between Melchior and Holden.
You cut away from him. I love that. It's a great image. Yeah. Those banners were provided by AEG, the artwork for it. Like, it's actually from some of their other games. I think they had a couple pieces of commissioned. Here we are on the Gen Con main stage.
You and me, we could rule this.
Sometimes the lighting doesn't quite match, but again, we had 8 pages worth of dialogue and crowd shots we had to film in 1 hour with 5 cameras and 4 operators. And like Ben was running the cameras with the camera crew. I was directing these actors as well as 600 extras, and understanding that we only got 1 or 2 takes per shot because we had to move on because the clock was burning, right? And you know, at ZOECon 1, the back of the shirt, the bottom back of the shirt was for safety. Because even, it's a film thing. You get a shot and you think it's perfect and you're ready to move on, you always get another take, just for safety. In case, there's our Purple Ninja's appearance, getting killed in the movie. You always do a second take for safety in case the video is corrupted or the audio doesn't come through or any other of the number of things that can happen that can botch a piece of footage. And so we would say that, like, that was great, let's do one more for safety. And after doing that 2 or 3 times, the crowd would chant, "For safety!" at the end of every time I said it. So it became this thing, and that was fun. Apple of life.
I mean, just like all of the like cards and puzzle pieces that had to like fit together perfectly for you guys to actually get that done.
So Samara is climbing a ladder here. In order to create that. Like, I love how this shot comes together. Like, it is, even though it is clearly a 2-dimensional image, as is this, she's moving through it, and it looks so good. There, it's so otherworldly.
I was wondering, Anita, right?
Oh, and Jesse was so awful in this scene. In the good sense, I mean, the character was awful. He's a perversion of who he used to be. Apple still looks like a Christmas tree ornament to me, but you know, it's just whatever. Move that fake tree. That fake tree that blends in with the artwork.
Yeah.
Return to the golden, ageless life.
I do like that you guys keep putting this actor in green makeup.
Yeah. Jesse Keeter is a rare kind of actor. He reminds me of Brian Lewis and Emily Shimkus and Anne Kennedy Brady, and that you can put here I am speaking in the first person. You can give them any role, dramatic or comedic, absurd or realistic, and they're going to nail it. And they're going to, like, there's not a weak spot in them. They become a sort of like a wild card in a way of, I know that I can put this actor in any situation, and the performance they're going to deliver is going to be stunning. And oh man, I love this. The makeup crew, Sean Shelton and David Van Heet, were so proud of this makeup. And the thing about prosthetic makeup like this, effects makeup, is it has a half-life, and it starts to degrade, and you have to do touch-ups throughout the day. And so, understanding that the makeup is on a timer and it's going to start decaying the moment the actor gets out of the chair, you want to get your close-ups first. You want to get the emotional stuff first when the makeup is, when you're closest like this, and the makeup needs to be at its top quality. And then, ideally, you move to your wider stuff, like we did there. And it worked.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a few places where the green screen isn't perfect, but that's fine. Tap. Woohoo! Apple of life. Compensate.
5 short.
Too bad you won't last the turn.
For this,
I gotta give a ton of credit to Ben Dobbins, co-director on this piece. My focus as a director is usually on the comedic timing and on the performances, because as a screenwriter, as someone who's done some acting, that's where I feel most comfortable, that's where the strengths lie. But Ben brings to the production, to the director's chair, that and a sense of geography and framing that I oftentimes struggle with, a sense of where we need to be within the frame from shot to shot, where we are geographically in a set. Like, he had to
activating Apple of Life.
Do camera setups and film things in such a way that you're matching shots with stuff you've done 3 months ago, and grabbing pieces and background plates that you don't know if it's going to work until you're on set again 3 months from now. And these green screen setups that we have to rotate the set in order to get the turnaround shot, and trust that it's going to work with the background that we have to create, that it's going to be two-dimensional. And the fact that it all worked was remarkable. And I don't know anyone other than Ben who could have planned that and executed it.
That you now have to feed. And yep, you don't have any food production on your board. Holy sex balls.
I love these two. I miss them. They're in California now. In the trading card. Now what's funny is, for our Army of the Dead, it was 2 guys. It was 2 guys who we filmed over and over again on a green screen and stacked them there for that big fall down. And here we have some wonderful reveal. You forget, I'm only 2 renown away from victory.
To the garden.
There was one outtake, it was late in the day, where Samara and Ben conspired against me. And, because I'm at the video village like this on the monitor, and she went down to pull the turnip up, and it came up instead with Chibi Chan's head. And I thought, that was it for me. I'm done, I'm out. That's it. I love this crowd reaction here, and I love redeeming the character of Weaver a bit, just by the quality of the game. Love that one.
I have to say, there's something like Evil Bowling League about them that's like, I don't know if it's the shirts or like that one guy's sideburns.
The funny thing about the shirts is one of our producers, Rennie Arukto, had worked with Gen Con for a number of years, and he had a number of Gen Con official shirts that had a style that we liked. So a lot of those shirts are former Gen Con shirts that we put legacy patches over.
One Buxtehude will live on in legend.
Oh, apparently we have no video, so I'm gonna drop off and try to get re-invited again.
Okay.
Is that better?
Yeah,
All right, there we go.
We won! We did it! We did it! We did it! We did it! Everybody! Get naked!
I don't know any other way that character could have gone out. And here we are in a side hall at the original ZOE Con.
Da Vinci.
Mark?
Your student acquitted himself well today.
And yours got a little out of hand.
Admittedly so. I'll be far more discriminating the next time I elect to train a team. The game can't survive another legacy. The game misses you.
The game's in good hands. Meech.
Leo. Actually, my flight doesn't leave for another 6 hours. Do you want to get a beer?
I like that.
Hell yes. And I'm buying.
Why, thank you, Sim.
And there we see Sim in the window for the first time.
We are gathered here before the eyes of God and of all gods.
The chaplain from the
of Myriad
display.
Buxtehude of Holden and Prince Ranin of Malchior.
And here's the other scene we filmed outside in Indianapolis in the blazing heat and sun.
So congrats. You saved our world.
Please, that's a little Dances with Wolvesy. I want a card game.
I was gonna go Last Samurai-esque.
Or Avatar-ish, perhaps.
We're really talking about Birth of a Nation. Except you're not a racist fuck.
Indeed. Indeed not. I'm a dick, not an asshole.
An important distinction.
I don't remember writing that at all.
Thanks. You're gonna want to wipe your prints off that.
Thanks for the tip. So, I suppose you'll be expecting that date now?
Nah. I didn't actually get your monarch on the throne. Plus, I owe you an Apple of Life card, you and Leo.
It died for a good cause.
And let's face it, getting a date through the whole I did X, so you owe me Y thing is kind of douchey.
Well, you're kind of a douchebag, so... kind of expecting you to contradict me there.
Why? It's true.
So, will I be seeing you at the next regional qualifier?
I think you might.
Cool. I hear you know this great waffle place. Maybe we grab some coffee after, sling some cards, talk about the game?
I'd like that.
See you around, Cass.
Wife? I have something for you. A belated wedding present.
What is this?
The roots of the tree of life grow through many worlds.
And here we tie in a bit with some lore in Farther All and the Hop Junkie Umbrella universe as well. And I think this, I'm a little disappointed in this scene, or just in how it's written. It's very clunky. You know, it's basically the husband's coming here and giving Myriad agency after she's, you know, taken her own the entire film. And
Am I early?
looking back at it, it's like, I mean, I understand why, you know, structurally it worked, but for the character, it didn't as well. That's one I'd do differently if I had the chance.
Go. Save your love.
Any other questions?
Actually, we haven't been getting
behind that
too many
ridiculous dress
questions.
suits you none at all.
People in chat, if you're out there and have any, feel free to start funneling them in as we kind of wind down a little bit. And I love the dress flying.
Try to keep up.
It's one of my favorites. So with the costuming, like how much of the fantasy stuff was made? How much of it was already kind of around? And
a lot of it was made. Janessa Strick, I think was no, that was it. And Janessa Strick and Vanessa, I can't remember. Drivenus were our costumers on this, and they put together a ton of stuff for the look of the film. I know that the art department also had a lot of material. The Seattle Knights donated a lot of armor and weapons that we used to round out the look of the film. But a lot of it was creative, like particularly the Myriad's costumes and the Real's costumes, a lot of the fantasy world stuff. And makeup especially did some amazing things there. We didn't have as many heavy prosthetics as we do during Journey Quest, but a lot of those pieces, like Scoffla and the Emissary, both had not just facial pieces on their faces, but on chest as well. The Djinn had those magnificent ears and the long mustache and such. It was the art teams and all the production design really stepped up in this film and made it look like $1 million.
Hotel room, and there's a bikini that someone
her 2 teardrops.
Oh no! Oh baby.
I don't know.
Yeah. The shrine.
What else is there to say?
So, okay, I do have a question just for me. How much the gamer's natural one, where does that fit in the timeline of the actual
Gabriel Gonda figured that out when he directed the Shadow Menace. He put together an entire timeline of the gamer's properties to that point that included the gamer's novel Pwned and all the movies and the new stuff as well as to when it actually happened. I don't remember off the top of my head. And part of that is because I actually didn't write Natural One. I wrote Humans and Households and directed that, and I was not expecting to direct Natural One. And I kind of inherited that shoot because after the first day, the director quit, not just the film, but apparently filmmaking. So, very bad day. And so I got told by the producer that night, it's like, hey, you're directing. I'm sorry, what? Yes, our director quit. Like, the industry. So we need you to step in. And so I had been spending that time prepping to do Humans and Households, and so I inherited a thing that was in the middle of going. And so we got through it. I'm pleased with how it turned out, but I wasn't as familiar with the writing on that one because I didn't do it.
Ninja Dragon Riders, Secret Rockstar USA.
So was the song written by you or someone else?
I came up with the basic melody and the lyrics.
Okay.
Wanted something that sounded badly translated.
Spitting.
A little left there.
Oh.
A little more to the left. Split the difference. Huh. Actually, I don't know what I was thinking. That's way too left.
Oh, come on.
Are you ready?
All right, that's good.
Just to prove. He hasn't changed that much.
Oh, he hasn't, of course not.
Thanks. Look, congratulations and everything, but I'd be lying if I said I wasn't excited to not have your face around polluting my favorite game anymore. They based a card on you.
Oh, look at that. They totally did.
Would you sign this for me?
Sure.
Game time.
Yeah.
God, it's been longer since we did. Oh man! So the original Gamers came out in 2002.
Who's the bid, Jesus?
It's Rising and came out in 2008. So 6 years later.
Okay.
This came out in 2013. So 5 years later. So 7 years later, it's been longer between any other two Gamers movies. Not if you count, the Shadow Menace. But if you count just the features and interest. Yeah.
All right. Pad thai for you. I can do the chicken larb.
No.
No problem.
Again, if there were things I had to do again, I don't know that I would end on the cliffhanger with
Well, Mr. and Mrs. Spratt.
getting sucked into farther role. And the reason for that is, one, it's not a complete movie because it's promising something else in the future that we haven't gotten to. I think it kind of takes it away from the main storyline, which has concluded that we move into something else.
Yeah,
and
we all been here
we paint ourselves into a corner now. It's like we can't really do another Gamers movie just with the 5 of them doing an RPG or whatever because they're stuck in the fantasy world now and we have to address that. And the reason for doing that I still think is sound, and it's that we wanted an escalation from the previous movie. Every one of the Gamers movies has had an escalation from the previous one. You know, the original Gamers was not a feature film, and it didn't even get into the lives of the players. It was only about the characters. Darkness Rising was a feature. It dealt with the characters. Hands of Fate dealt with the characters, but escalated it into gamer culture and the tournaments and the championship. Where do we go from there? Well, they're actually in the fantasy world. Like, I don't know where else to go beyond that, and I don't want to just make the same movie over and over again. Like, if you're doing a show, that's fine. If you're doing a sitcom or a genre drama, that's fine. That's what you're doing. But we've done these as films, and if those films are going to continue to progress and escalate, then you can't just be doing the same thing over and over again. So at the time, this felt like a great idea that it would set them up for, we'll knock out the next one of these in 3 or 4 years, and that was 3 or 4 years ago. So, I mean, I'm hopeful that we'll get to it soon. There definitely are plans for a Gamers 4. I've got the plans for a Gamers 4. Would like to make it. I love this end credit sequence, though, showing cards not only from the movie, but that were based on suggestions made by high-level backers that made it into the set and its expansion, the 2 Romance of the Nine Empires card games. And when we gave people the stipulations for what can you put in your card, they gave a suggestion for what they wanted the card's mechanics to be, what faction, what kind of card, because we had a general gist of what that would be before the rule set were actually solidified. And AEG worked really well with us. Mark Wooten, who was the designer for R9E, worked all that in, and these are actual cards from the game, and it is a playable game that you can play. It's incredibly complicated, and I don't know how to play it, but you can play it.
And a lot of work must have gone into those cards.
Tons.
I mean, it really just adds, like, texture and detail to the world.
It's again, I was periodically out of it throughout the filming because, a new daddy brain and
it's like understandable.
And this was a fun, incredibly challenging film. Technically challenging, narratively challenging. I think we pulled it off. I will always see the flaws in it in ways that we could have made it better. But then again, that's just the curse of the filmmaker, I think. And that can get in the way of the fact that we did a pretty impressive film based on all what it had to accomplish and all the production hurdles that we had to overcome. Anyway, that's my thinking. I'm happy with it.
Oh, will CD-chan return in Gamers 4?
I hope not. I don't know how he would, but that may be something that people expect, and so it may be something I have to accommodate. But it has to. Like I mentioned earlier, that scene with between Hikaru and Gary, like, it's got to be, even in a comedy, it's got to be realistic to the characters. It can't be farcical. If I can figure out a realistic, true storyline way to bring Chibi-chan in a not incredible. But if I can't fit that in, just like that scene, the Lodge's rant about Firefly, we can plan to have that scene in, and if it ultimately turns out that it doesn't fit with what the movie it turns out to be, then it won't go in.
Okay, sorry, I lost track of where we are in questions. Okay, so when are we gonna see Harzul, the Incredibly Evil, and Sister Opal in a Gamers movie?
I don't know. That would make a pretty good Gamers movie, I think. I don't know that would make a great... Well, that one might work just as its own fantasy film, because the characters, I think, are so strong there. I don't know, but it's nice to know that we have extra material in case we need it. Just a few thousand Kickstarter backers here.
Yeah. So, this was not the first time I had seen the film. Answering questions from chat. I had not seen the extended version, so Lodge and that storyline I hadn't seen before. I'm gonna have to rewatch where I can actually listen to some of the dialogue and experience it. So Matt, how do you feel about Oblivion Water and his metaverse arc?
You know, it turned out spectacularly well. At the time it happened, it was pretty scary, and I thought, I don't think we're going to be able to wrap this up. I think you just actually undid everything with that Oblivion Water, Christian, you idiot. You magnificent idiot. But then we managed to pull it off, and it was dramatic and fantastic and memorable. So I don't know that I would have chosen to go that way. Actually, I do know I would not have chosen to go that route, but it happened, and we dodged a bullet there. But that was a matter of giving the players that level of agency over the storyline, and they acted in entirely appropriate ways, in a way that almost undid the entire 6-episode arc, but had to let it stand, because if it had actually gone through and erased everything, that would have been incredible on its own. That would have been something.
Okay, so just asked if you are going to GM again.
Oh, sure. I miss it. It's just a matter of finding the time, and of course we have a lot of time now.
Yeah.
And one of the benefits of working on the Farther World Guide and rounding out all 9 ages of the world's history over the last year was there's plenty of story material, and there's plenty of places to set a new gamer's story or something else in that universe now. Just, figuring out when and where to put it. Look at all those Matthews, good lord. My parents didn't get the memo between like 1975 and 1982. You don't need to name your son Matthew. I've never been the only Matthew in my cohort, in a class or in a group. When we were filming the final scene in The Gamers, where the gamers come through and they kill their players, 5 of the 9 people in the room were named Matthew.
That's like all of our marks now.
Yeah.
Oh, here's a relevant question. Going to ZOECon tomorrow?
Yes, I'll be in as much as I can. I mean, I'm at home with a pair of rambunctious children who need stimulation, and one has a 2nd grade math and assignments from his teacher, and my wife works from home, and half of the day is hers to work upstairs doing her events planning stuff. So I will be in when I can. I am going to be... Brian Lewis has put together a read-through of one of my scripts, an actual dramatic fantasy called Grandmother Clock, that's going to be at, I believe it's 10 a.m. on Saturday, and I'll be participating in that, reading the action text. But that's the only thing I'm currently scheduled for, because my ability to be anywhere reliably right now is not reliable.
Well, I'm really glad you joined us tonight for your wealth of information about this movie and the lore of this movie.
It was a pleasure to see it again. It's unlocking a whole bunch of memories, seeing as an, oh right, we did do that. Oh right, that was based on something that we put way too much time and detail into. As is the case. I miss it. I miss being on set and directing. It's been a while, but as hard and as challenging as this film was, I'm eternally grateful for the fact that we got to do it, and the relationships that we forged while doing it, not just with the cast and the crew, but with so many of the backers, the folks who came to set, and the folks who created cards, and the folks who coined orcish words over, between seasons 2 and 4 of Journey Quest, have supported this bonkers little startup in the nutso movies that we keep making for this magnificent audience, and it's an absolute pleasure to keep being able to do it and keep being infused with your trust. So thank you.
Let's direct for questions. Oh, a lot of jokey questions.
Fire away. I'm here until you're done.
Oh, so I accidentally muted Sharon. Well, I didn't accidentally mute her. I muted her to cut down on echo on my end.
Okay.
And I can't unmute her for some reason. So I don't know
if what you did.
Oh, there we go. It's unmuted now.
All right.
So how's the novel going?
The novel is spotty right now. I need to be getting back to it. I had some good momentum going for a while there, and then the world went into stasis, and the plague hit. The hard thing is, when I write, I have to have control over the space. And whether it's for an hour, whether it's for 3 or 4, it's a matter of I need it to be quiet, I need it to be cool, and I need to sort of go through my ritual that gets me into the space where I can actually do it. And I can force myself to write when I'm not in that space, but it's hacky and it's pained and it's not very good. And that level of reliable trance that I can get into has not been there. So I'm going to take another stab at getting back to it, but I mean, it used to be I would be writing between 3,000 to 4,000 words a day, and I've had to lower my daily word count to 1, just because I can't reliably get beyond that before I'm tapped out. But it's coming along. It's turning out to be longer than I expected. Which of my projects hasn't been, and more complicated? So I want to get it done because I'd like to get into some other things as well. I'm enjoying it. It's a good piece. I'm discovering layers in it that I didn't expect to be there, and that I want to make sure are given the room to breathe and not just glossed over. But at the same time, I don't want to obsess too much about it. And so it's coming. It's a work in progress. I wish I had more concrete details, and I do owe a Kickstarter update on that. But the Kickstarter update is I have to figure out a clever and charming way to say, no news, still doing it. It's, I got caught in the same shitstorm that slowed everything else down, so sorry. But
I mean, a lot of people are feeling that way right now.
Yeah, it's a hard time to be creative. I read a little Twitter thread about it from a developmental psychologist who's saying that the reason why a lot of us in the creative arts are feeling super burned out right now and unproductive is because the part of our brains that we would normally use for creative problem solving, the dealing with the novel, is being used in trying to figure out how the hell am I going to survive this thing and what do I need to be doing from day to day. It's when you're in survival mode, you don't want to be talking them stories as much. It's not as important to the perpetuation of your species.
Sorry, I'm trying to. God, I can't read too good, apparently.
That's fine. It's not no one's operating at full capacity right now.
Yeah. There was a Matt podcast. Was something that got mentioned?
I do have a podcast that I ran as part of my Patreon called Cottawample. It's only available through the Patreon, but it's free. So if you follow me there, you'll get it. I've suspended my Patreon for the foreseeable future because I can't keep up with the content releases. I used to be I would do 4 releases a month, one for the first 4 weeks, and it would be a chapter of fiction, which is usually on the novel, but before that had been part of the Farther Old World Guide, or is occasionally a short story. The second week is something called Choose Your Own Grisly Doom, which is like a choose your own adventure, but all of the options are horrid and eventually lead to your grisly death. And no one succeeds in them. And then with the podcast in the third week, and then just an essay or what I call the look under the hood, sort of a peek behind, the veil of what is it that we do in the industry, what's part of the writing process, part of the language creation. Here's a day on set where I went into prosthetics as an orc. Here's a day on set where I went into prosthetics as a demon. Here's some notes from film school on how to properly structure a 3-act reveal, that sort of thing. And when I'm operating at full capacity and I get my 3 to 5 hours of uninterrupted writing time a day, that's no problem, and I can divert one day a week or so, or half a day a week or so to knock out the content for the Patreon. But right now, operating at such reduced capacity, I couldn't create the content releases, and so I made the choice to postpone rather than put out rushed or crappy content. Well, sorry, rushed or crappier content.
And that's totally fair. Like, you want to make sure you're putting out stuff that you're happy with.
But as for the podcast, if you're interested, it's called Cottawample. It's on the Matt Vancil Patreon, which you should be able to find, and you just look for the podcast tag or search through those. They should be free and public facing. I think there are 10 episodes in there, and it's basically Cottawample is this wonderful English verb from the 19th century that means to stride purposefully towards a vague destination. And my co-host and I, who is usually Nathan Rice, but isn't always, we discuss what we've been working on, what we have upcoming, and then what have you been reading, what have you been watching, what have you been playing, and discuss that ad infinitum, and then we do a Q&A. And some of them have been good. I mean, I enjoy a good conversation. Part of it is when you're over 40, as you have to schedule times to spend with your friends. And so if once a month I can get in touch with a good friend and have a nice conversation, that's worth the time.
So I've asked this question to some other people that we've had on ZOE Movie Night. What is your favorite line from the movie we just watched? I know you mentioned you didn't remember most of it, but...
One of my favorite lines from the movie is one that got cut because it was so mean.
Oh, no.
And this is, again, something that came out of the Paizo warehouse. There was a bit where when Cass is first complaining to Leo about the card gamers in his store, he makes some joke about personal hygiene and how it smells awful, and he says, "It smells like a turd fucked a cheeseburger." And the studio decided to cut that line. Actually, it wasn't the studio, it was everyone who reviewed the cut said, "Oh my God, cut that, that's terrible." And it's not because the line itself was awful, it was because Brian delivered it in such a way that it was an attack line rather than a casual conversation. "It smells like a turd fucked a cheeseburger." Like, it was brutal. It was like, I no longer like this character. This character is not a protagonist I'm rooting for. So out it went. I don't know that that's my favorite one, but that's one that I remember, certainly. I think if I had to go with my actual favorite one that made it in the movie, it's "Are we not fighting? I thought we were fighting."
Yeah. So, I don't know if it got... I think it was while you were really choppy earlier. Could you briefly explain what the Paizo warehouse was?
Sure. So when I moved back from Hollywood to Washington, I thought the film career was pretty much over. I'd taken my shot in Los Angeles and hadn't gotten anything made, and it had been several years, and there had been a writer's strike, and I was like, well, that was fun. Time to go get a real job. And at the time, I had friends who worked at Paizo. They actually were our gaming industry distributors for our DVDs. And I saw that they had a position open in their warehouse in Redmond, which is where my wife was going to be working, so we could commute together. And I basically emailed Lisa Stevens, the CEO, and said, can I have this job in the warehouse? And they talked over it and said, sure, yeah, we have people here who vouch for you, so come in. And I worked there for about a year and a half, a total, because I came back at a certain point when times were rough. And it was my favorite job not doing my own stuff I ever had. Wonderful people. It's involved in gaming. I was shipping out my own movies around the world from time to time, which was great. But what was nuts about it is you had a totally different culture between the office side of Paizo and the warehouse side of Paizo. And the warehouse side of Paizo was sort of under the table. We could control it, we could keep it down, because the warehouse is probably 3/4 of the actual building. These massive racks of publications going back several years, filling the aisles and the stacks 3 stories high, forklift driving around in between, stuff getting shipped out all over the world. And we got there super early. And we'd start work at 7 a.m., which meant that you're wheels up and out of your place in Tacoma by 5 to be there. And you're there for a couple of hours before anyone else. So when it's that cold and it's that early, because it's not, temperature controlled, aside from it's going to stay above freezing, you find ways to entertain yourself with the other deluded freaks who are willing to work that early in the morning. And a lot of the humor, a lot of the raunchy, cursy humor, like the Hydra Dick joke, and some other characters that I will never, ever mention because they would immediately get me banned, came out of those early morning Paizo days and yelling stuff across the echoing warehouse chamber. One of my favorite stories is just sort of the warehouse sense of humor that's not dirty. So this is one of those. Is there was a station in the warehouse where you had the pick line, which is where they had individual copies of everything and in the warehouse for orders that came in, not the distribution orders, but individual orders to the Paizo web store, right? So I need to grab this adventure path, this core book, and this miniature from over here, put them in a thing and ship it out, right? Those orders. And that was where the shipping computer and the phone was. The phone was rigged up so that it would immediately go on to speakerphone anytime customer service or someone from the actual office called down. And the reason it would go on to speakerphone is because we might be anywhere in the warehouse there. You might be on the forklift, you might be on the back. And so you'd hear, beep, hello warehouse, and it would echo throughout there. And if we were close, we would say, hello customer service, can you look, and it was always, can you look up an order for me or something? Or we need checking the status on this order, and we followed it up. Well, when it was slow, we got childish and silly. And one time, one of the guys found a soundboard. And one of the things he found on the soundboard was the Kool-Aid Man. And so we queued that up, and we waited for customer service to call us with an order. And then it happened. We go, boop! Hello, warehouse? We activated the soundboard. Oh, yeah! Can you look up an order for us? Oh, yeah! Did you find a soundboard? Oh, yeah! And so just echoing it back to customer service. Silly. It was funnier to me.
So I got one last question for you, and then we're going to kind of wrap it up here.
Yeah, that killed it, didn't it?
What would you do with a $10 million production budget?
I'd make a season of Hop Jockey. Why is that funny?
I was not expecting that answer. That's all.
What were you expecting? I'm curious.
I don't know. I honestly don't know what I was expecting.
No, if I had that level of money, I would make a probably 6 to 13 episode season of Hop Jockey, which is a science fantasy comedy piece that I wrote I wanted to do forever. I wrote the first stories of it when Dead Gentleman was first forming. I pitched it around Hollywood when I was in film school. It actually got optioned, and I pitched it at the Cartoon Network and Sci-Fi Channel and some other places, and it didn't land. An earthquake actually hit in the middle of the pitch at Sci-Fi. It was nuts. The whole building was swaying like this. And, I then had to turn around and pitch to a traumatized executive who turned out had lost their house in the Cal Northridge quake some 15 years earlier. So we didn't sell the show. And then eventually I wrote that as a novel a couple of years ago. And that novel version is the one I want to adapt and turn into a series, something along the lines of a Netflix show or maybe Amazon Prime. Because I think that's the kind of platform that I could do it in a well, that'd be the right platform for it. I don't know that it would work on broadcast TV, but if I had that much money, that's probably what I'd do. If it were up to me. Of course, if it were up to you and you said I have $10 million, you're going to make my film, I would say, yes, I will. What would you like?
So, ZOECon is happening this weekend.
That's right.
Yeah, that thing that's been kind of buzzed around on Discord.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know a schedule. I know there's going to be a lot of streaming kind of commentary content. Sharon, do you have
I have
any
some
more specifics in that?
I know that it starts at noon Pacific time. I think it's the opening ceremonies tomorrow, and then I know that there is quite a bit of construction still going on the Discord server, but you can register for free at the Fantasy Network. And there's a optional, you can you set the price of your ticket basically, so you can come for free and you can hang out for most things, but if you want to pay a little bit more, then you can get access to some other stuff that's going on. I don't know if the schedule's been posted publicly, so I don't want to make any promises, but I have seen the working schedule and it is very exciting, especially if you like what we've been doing here at Zoe Movie Night for the last few weeks. There's a lot of screenings and a lot of cast commentary that is scheduled. So, yeah. That's all I got.
Yeah. I mean, thank you for joining us, Matt. That was it was really cool that we got some lore behind the card game and where things were shot and kind of tied it back to ZOECon.
Oh, my pleasure. Thanks for having me back. The original ZOECon, that was one of those Ben Dobbins solutions. Is we can't film. We have all this stuff that's supposed to happen at a convention. We can't possibly film everything we need to at Gen Con. So what if we made our own convention? And we haven't, and now it's year 4 over since that original one 8 years ago, which is pretty good recursion rate for Zoe projects, once every 2 years.
Hey, it's more successful than some other conventions, so.
It never fails to boggle the mind.
All right, so unless we've got anything else to add, I think we'll kind of sign off here.
All right. Thanks so much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks for joining us for the Gamers 3. It's a Fate.
Give me a wave, Skype people. Wave at the camera, Skype people.
Huh?
Wave.
Oh, I'm waving.
Oh, wave. Yes. Hi. Human interaction. Norm.